Hi, friends, welcome to How Memory Really Works, a gentle science story for deep sleep tonight. As the world around you becomes quieter, your mind is carrying an invisible collection of places, people, sounds, faces, feelings, and moments. Some of them may have happened only a few minutes ago. Others may belong to a distant childhood. Some memories are bright and easy to find. Others seem to have disappeared completely. And then, for no obvious reason, they return while you are washing a cup, walking down a quiet street, or lying awake in the darkness. Memory is one of the most familiar things in human life. And yet, when we look closely, it becomes wonderfully mysterious. How does the brain remember a face? How can a smell suddenly bring back an afternoon from 20 years ago? Why can you remember the words of a song you have not heard since childhood, while forgetting where you placed your keys only moments ago? And why does sleep matter so much to the quiet work of remembering? Tonight, we are going to take a slow journey through the science of memory. There will be no rush. Nothing you need to memorize, nothing you need to solve. You can simply listen and let the ideas pass gently through your mind. Perhaps you are already lying somewhere comfortable. Maybe the room is dark. Perhaps there is a faint sound outside, the soft hum of a fan, the distant movement of traffic, or the quiet sound of night air moving through a window. Let your body become a little heavier. Let your shoulders rest. And while you listen, imagine that your mind is like a vast landscape at night. Somewhere within it are pathways. Some are well-traveled. Others are covered in grass. Some lead toward places you visit every day. Others disappear into forests that you have not entered for years. And scattered across this landscape are countless traces of your life. A grandmother's voice, the smell of rain on warm pavement, the feeling of standing beside an old school building, the sound of a door closing, a face you once knew very well, a meal shared with someone you loved, the sensation of sunlight on your hands, a particular room, perhaps one you have not seen in a very long time. All of these experiences have left traces in your nervous system. But memory is not a little library inside the brain. There is no tiny room filled with shelves where your childhood is stored in perfect order. The reality is much more beautiful. Memory emerges from the activity and changing connections of enormous networks of nerve cells. And those networks are constantly adjusting. Tonight, we will slowly explore how that happens. Let us begin with something very simple. You are listening to these words. For a moment, you are receiving sounds. Those sounds enter your ears as changes in air pressure. Your ears transform those movements into electrical signals. Those signals travel through the nervous system, and your brain begins interpreting them. You do not experience this as a complicated chain of biological events. You simply hear a voice, perhaps a calm voice, speaking somewhere in the darkness. But even now, something important is happening. Your brain is deciding what deserves attention. It is organizing sounds into words, words into meanings, meanings into ideas. And some of those ideas may remain with you after the sound has disappeared. This is one of the first clues to understanding memory. Memory begins with experience. Before there can be a memory of something, there must first be some kind of encounter with it. A sight, a sound, a movement, a thought, a sensation, an emotion, or some combination of these. The brain is constantly receiving information from the outside world and from the body itself. Light enters the eyes. Sound reaches the ears. Pressure touches the skin. Chemicals stimulate the senses of smell and taste. Inside the body, signals report temperature, balance, movement, hunger, and countless other conditions. Most of this information never becomes a lasting memory, and that is probably a good thing. Imagine remembering every sound you heard today, every passing car, every cough from a distant room, every word spoken nearby, every color that crossed your field of vision, every sensation from your clothing touching your skin, every movement of your eyes, every tiny change in temperature. The mind would become impossibly crowded. Instead, the brain constantly filters. It selects, it compares, it notices, and it lets enormous amounts of information fade almost immediately. This forgetting is not necessarily a failure. It is part of how the system works. Memory depends partly on knowing what not to keep. Think of a quiet shoreline at night. The ocean moves toward the sand. Every wave leaves a temporary pattern. For a few moments, the water has shaped the surface. Then another wave arrives. The old pattern changes. Some marks disappear. Others remain. A few may become deeper over time. Memory is somewhat like this. Experience changes the brain, but those changes can be temporary or lasting. And one of the most important ideas in modern neuroscience is that learning can alter the connections between neurons. Neurons are the specialized cells that make up much of the nervous system. The human brain contains roughly 86 billion of them. Each neuron can communicate with other cells through specialized connections called synapses. There are an enormous number of these connections, and they are not simply fixed wires. They can change. Some connections become stronger. Some become weaker. New connections can form. Existing ones can be modified. This ability of the nervous system to change is often called neuroplasticity, or simply neuroplasticity. It is one of the foundations of learning and memory. Imagine walking through a field for the first time. There is no obvious path. The grass stands upright. Your feet press it down. If you walk the same way again, and again, and again, the route gradually becomes easier to follow. A pathway begins to emerge. The brain can develop in somewhat similar ways. Repeated activity can alter the strength and organization of connections between neurons. The biological details are much more complicated than a path through grass. But the basic idea is useful. Experience can leave physical and functional changes in the nervous system. And those changes can influence what happens the next time you encounter something similar. This is why learning is not merely the collection of information. It is also a change in the brain. When you learn a new name, practice a new movement, study a new idea, or become familiar with a new place, your nervous system is being altered. Tiny changes are taking place across networks of cells. You do not feel each one. There is no little sensation in the back of your head announcing, your memory has just been updated. The process is quiet, almost invisible, yet it is happening. One of the most important distinctions in memory science is between different stages of memory. You may hear the terms encoding, storage, and retrieval. These words sound technical, but the ideas are wonderfully simple. Encoding is the process by which the brain transforms an experience into a form that can influence future activity. Storage refers to the persistence of information over time. Retrieval is the process of bringing information back into active use. Imagine meeting someone for the first time. You hear their name. You see their face. Perhaps you shake their hand. Maybe you notice their voice. You might also notice where you met them. All of these details become part of the experience. Your brain begins forming associations. That is part of encoding. Later that evening, you may think, what was that person's name? If the information has been retained well enough, your brain can bring it back. That is retrieval. Sometimes retrieval is easy. Sometimes it takes effort. Sometimes the memory seems completely gone, and then suddenly appears when something provides the right clue. This is why memory is not simply a matter of storing information. It is also a matter of finding the information again. A memory can exist in some form without being immediately accessible to conscious thought, and the clues surrounding an experience can become important pathways back toward it. Perhaps you have experienced this. You walk into another room and suddenly cannot remember why you went there. You stand quietly. You look around. Nothing comes. Then you return to the room you were previously in and suddenly remember. The reason may have been connected to the context. The first room contained part of the mental situation in which the thought was active. Changing environments can sometimes change the cues available for retrieval. This is one small example of a much larger truth. Memory is deeply connected to context. We do not remember information in isolation as neatly as we might imagine. We remember relationships, connections, situations, sensations, places, emotions, and sequences of events. The brain is constantly building associations between things. A particular song may become connected to a particular summer. A certain perfume may become connected to a person. The sound of rain may become connected to childhood evenings. A classroom may become connected to a teacher's voice. A familiar street may bring back memories you had not consciously thought about for years. The cue does not necessarily contain the whole memory. It simply provides a doorway. And now, as you continue listening, you can imagine that doorway somewhere inside the quiet landscape of your mind. Perhaps there is a wooden door beneath an old tree. Perhaps behind it is a room filled with warm evening light. You do not need to open it. Just know that it is there. Memory does not require you to visit every room tonight. In fact, tonight you can let the doors remain closed, because sleep itself is part of the story. For a long time, scientists wondered what the sleeping brain was doing. To an outside observer, sleep can look like inactivity. The body becomes still. The eyes close. The person becomes less responsive to the world. But inside the skull, the brain remains remarkably active. Different patterns of neural activity appear during different stages of sleep, and sleep plays an important role in learning and memory. One reason may be that the brain uses periods of rest to reorganize information gathered during waking life. The details are still an active area of research, but scientists have found strong evidence that sleep can support memory consolidation. Consolidation is a useful word here. It refers broadly to processes that help newly acquired memories become more stable and integrated. Imagine spending an entire day walking through a busy city. You see streets, buildings, people, signs, vehicles, restaurants, trees, windows, bridges. Hundreds of thousands of details pass through your senses. You return home exhausted. You do not need to consciously organize every detail before sleeping. Instead, during rest, your brain continues its own work. Some experiences may be strengthened. Some connections may be modified. Some information may become integrated with older knowledge. Other details may gradually disappear. The sleeping brain is not simply pressing a pause button. It is participating in the ongoing process of learning. One structure that has become especially important in the scientific study of memory is the hippocampus. The hippocampus is a curved structure located deep within the brain. There is one on each side. Its name comes from an ancient Greek word associated with a seahorse because of its shape. It is not a complete storage container for all memories. Instead, it plays an important role in forming and organizing certain kinds of new memories, especially memories involving events and places. Scientists have learned a great deal about the hippocampus through patients with brain injuries, animal studies, brain imaging, electrophysiology, and many other methods. One of the most famous cases in memory research involved a patient known for decades by the initials HM. After severe epilepsy that could not otherwise be controlled, surgeons removed parts of structures in his medial temporal lobes, including much of the hippocampal region. The treatment reduced his seizures, but it also produced profound difficulties in forming new long-term memories. He could talk. He could learn certain kinds of skills. He could interact with people. But forming new memories of everyday experiences became extremely difficult. The case helped scientists understand that memory is not one single ability. Different forms of memory depend on different brain systems. This discovery changed neuroscience. It showed that a person can retain certain abilities while losing the ability to form particular kinds of new memories. Memory, it turned out, was not a single box. It was a collection of interacting systems. There is memory for facts. There is memory for events. There is memory for skills. There is memory for habits. There are forms of memory involved in recognizing familiar things. And there are memories that influence behavior without ever entering conscious awareness in the same way that a remembered birthday does. Consider riding a bicycle. When you first learned, the movements probably required attention. Balance was unfamiliar. Your hands had to think about steering. Your body had to coordinate many small adjustments. With practice, the movements became more automatic. Eventually, you could ride while talking or looking around. You did not need to consciously calculate every movement of your muscles. That kind of learned ability belongs to what is often called procedural memory. It is memory for how to do things, and it is supported by brain systems that are not identical to those involved in remembering a particular afternoon from your childhood. This division is one reason memory is so fascinating. You can forget someone's name while still remembering how to tie your shoes. You can lose access to a particular event while retaining the ability to play an instrument. You can forget the details of a journey while still knowing how to drive a familiar route. The mind is not one memory system. It is more like an orchestra. Different sections contribute different parts, and when they work together, the result feels like a single experience. As you rest there, you might notice how strange it is that your own memories feel so personal. You do not experience them as electrical signals. You experience them as life. A remembered conversation can feel like a conversation. A remembered place can seem to unfold in front of you. A childhood room can suddenly appear in your imagination. Yet the original room is no longer there. The event has passed. What remains is the brain's present reconstruction of something that happened before. This is an important point. Memory is not a perfect recording. It is reconstructive. When you remember, your brain does not simply play a flawless video file. Instead, it reconstructs aspects of the past using stored information, current knowledge, context, expectations, and available cues. That is one reason memories can change over time. Two people can experience the same event and remember it differently. Even one person may remember the same event differently at different moments in life. This does not mean memory is useless. Far from it. Memory is extraordinarily powerful. It allows us to learn from experience, recognize people, navigate the world, build relationships, understand ourselves, imagine the future. But its flexibility comes with a cost. The past can be altered by the present. Think about a photograph. A photograph preserves a particular arrangement of light. Memory is different. It is more like a story that can be reconstructed whenever you return to it. The broad outline may remain stable. Some details may become clearer. Others may fade. New information can become connected to the old. Emotions can influence what stands out. And every act of remembering may itself become part of the memory's history. Scientists study this phenomenon under the broad idea of reconsolidation. When a memory is retrieved, it can sometimes become temporarily more changeable before being stabilized again. The exact mechanisms depend on the type of memory and the conditions involved. But the general picture is intriguing. Remembering may not simply reveal a memory. It may also participate in maintaining and updating it. In that sense, every time you revisit the past, your brain is meeting the past from the present. Now let the idea become softer. You do not have to understand every detail. You can simply imagine your memories as distant lights across a quiet landscape. Some shine brightly, some are faint, some have almost disappeared, and some seem to brighten when another light nearby is touched. A smell awakens a place. A song awakens a person. A word awakens a conversation. A photograph awakens an entire season of life. This happens because memory is deeply associative. The brain does not keep every experience in complete isolation. It builds networks. One memory can become connected with another, and the richer the network, the more possible routes there may be toward a remembered experience. This is one reason meaningful experiences are often remembered more easily than random details. Emotion can matter. Attention can matter. Repetition can matter. Sleep can matter. Meaning can matter. And the circumstances in which something is learned can matter too. Imagine learning a new word. You see it once. Perhaps you understand it. Then you never encounter it again. The memory may fade. But if you use the word tomorrow, and next week, and in a conversation, and while reading, the network surrounding it becomes richer. The word gains connections. It belongs to sentences, ideas, sounds, situations, other words, personal experiences. The memory becomes easier to access. Learning is often strongest when information becomes connected to something else. This is why curiosity can be such a powerful companion to memory. When something matters to you, your attention changes. You notice more. You connect ideas. You ask questions. You return to the subject. And each return provides another opportunity for the brain to strengthen and reorganize its knowledge. There is another remarkable feature of memory. It can help us imagine things that have never happened. At first, that may sound strange. Memory seems to be about the past. Imagination seems to be about the future or the possible. Yet the two abilities are deeply connected. When you imagine tomorrow, your brain can draw on pieces of yesterday, a familiar room, a known road, a person's face, the feeling of sunlight, the sound of water, the knowledge of what usually happens in a certain situation. The brain can combine these pieces in new ways. This means memory is not merely an archive of what has happened. It also provides raw material for thinking about what might happen. The same systems that help us understand our past can contribute to constructing possible futures. In this way, remembering and imagining are neighbors in the landscape of the mind. And perhaps that is why sleep is such a peaceful setting for thinking about memory. During the day, the world arrives continuously. Messages, voices, traffic, work, faces, tasks, questions, decisions. At night, the outside world becomes quieter. The stream of new information slows. Your attention can soften. The body rests. And the brain continues its mysterious activity. You do not need to supervise it. You do not need to tell each neuron what to do. You can simply rest, while your nervous system carries on with its ancient work. Some memories will become stronger. Some may become less accessible. Some connections will be reinforced. Others may weaken. And tomorrow, you will wake with a mind that has quietly changed during the night. So, as your breathing becomes slow and easy, let us leave the hippocampus for a little while. Imagine descending gently through the brain, not physically, but in imagination. Past the outer folds of the cerebral cortex, through quiet networks of cells, along pathways where electrical activity and chemical signals pass from one neuron to another. There is no flashing control room, no single command center where a tiny librarian sorts every memory. Instead, there are billions of cells participating in enormous networks. The brain works through patterns. A particular experience activates a particular combination of neurons. Another experience activates another pattern. Some patterns overlap. That overlap is important because your memories are not simply separate files. They form relationships. Your memory of a person may include their face, their voice, their name, the place you met, the emotions you felt, the conversations you shared, the food you ate that day, the weather outside, the season, even the expectations you had at the time. All of these elements can become woven together, and when one part returns, it may help bring others with it. Think of an old house. You might enter through the front door and remember the hallway. From the hallway, you notice a wooden staircase. The staircase reminds you of a bedroom. The bedroom reminds you of a window. The window reminds you of rain. And suddenly, you remember sitting beside that window on a particular afternoon. The memories seemed separate at first, but they were connected. The brain often works in this way. One cue leads to another. One association activates another. And gradually, a larger pattern emerges. This is why remembering can sometimes feel like wandering through a familiar landscape. You are not opening one file. You are following paths. And now, you can let the paths grow quiet. The science can remain in the background. The words can become softer. Your body does not need to hold on to them. If sleep arrives, let it arrive. There is nothing more you need to do. Your brain has been learning and remembering for your entire life, long before you knew the word memory. Your nervous system was already changing in response to experience, long before you could describe a childhood moment. Your brain was already building associations, long before you understood what sleep was. Your sleeping brain was already participating in the rhythms of rest. And tonight, while you lie quietly, that ancient process continues. The world outside can wait. The room can remain still. Your thoughts can drift wherever they wish. And somewhere deep within you, billions of small cells continue their quiet conversation. Not hurried, not dramatic, just the gentle biological activity of a living brain. Resting, organizing, remembering, and letting go. For now, we will simply float here, beneath the quiet night, beside the invisible pathways of memory. The quiet landscape of memory stretches farther than we can easily imagine. And tonight, we can wander a little deeper, not toward anything frightening, not toward anything that demands your attention, just gently, like walking beside a calm river beneath a sky full of stars. Because one of the most interesting things about memory is that it does not simply preserve the past. It helps shape the present, and, in a surprising way, it helps build the future. Imagine waking tomorrow morning. Before you open your eyes, your brain is already beginning to reconstruct the world around you. The room, the bed, the sounds outside, the familiar feeling of morning. You know where you are. You know who you are. You may know what day it is. All of this depends on an enormous network of knowledge and memories. You do not have to consciously rebuild yourself from the beginning every morning. Your brain carries a continuing sense of the world. It remembers enough of yesterday to make today understandable. This is one of the quiet gifts of memory. It gives continuity to experience. Without it, every moment would stand alone. A face would be familiar for only a few seconds. A room would lose its meaning. A road would be nothing more than pavement and movement. A word would have no history behind it. Memory allows one moment to reach backward toward another. It connects the present to everything that came before. There is a beautiful example in the simple act of recognizing a familiar face. Imagine seeing someone you have known for many years. You do not consciously calculate the distance between their eyes. You do not measure the shape of their nose. You do not list the color of their hair. You simply know them. Recognition can happen remarkably quickly. The visual system processes patterns of light and shape. Other brain networks contribute information about identity. Past experiences provide the context. And suddenly, a collection of signals becomes a person, someone familiar, someone with a history, someone whose presence carries meaning. That recognition depends on learning. Your brain has encountered that face many times. Each encounter has contributed to a network of associations. And over time, the pattern becomes deeply familiar. The same principle works with voices. You may recognize someone before you even see them. A few words from another room can be enough. The rhythm of their speech, the pitch of their voice, the way they pronounce certain sounds. These small features have become connected to a person in your memory. The same thing can happen with footsteps, a particular knock at the door, the sound of an old machine, the creaking floorboard in a familiar house. Your brain is constantly learning patterns. And once those patterns become familiar, they can be recognized with very little conscious effort. This is one reason the world feels stable. Your brain is not experiencing every moment as completely new. It is constantly comparing the present with what it has learned before. Now imagine a forest at night. You have walked through it many times. Even in darkness, certain paths feel familiar. You know where the ground slopes downward. You know where a tree stands near the trail. You know where the path bends. Your memory has become part of your navigation. The brain has an extraordinary ability to create internal representations of places. The hippocampus is especially important for this kind of spatial memory. Researchers studying animals have discovered neurons in the hippocampal formation that are associated with particular locations. These findings helped reveal that the brain can construct internal maps of environments. One famous example comes from research on rats navigating mazes. As an animal moves through a space, particular neurons can become active in relation to particular locations. Scientists have called some of these cells place cells. Later research identified other kinds of cells involved in spatial representation and navigation. Together, these discoveries revealed something remarkable. The brain does not simply respond to the world. It can build internal models of the world. And perhaps you have your own internal map. You could probably walk through your home without turning on every light. You know where the doorway is, where the furniture stands, where the floor changes, where the stairs begin. You may even know where certain objects are without consciously thinking about them. Your brain has learned the environment. Repeated experience has shaped its internal representation. And every time you move through that environment, you reinforce and update what you know. Memory also helps us understand sequences. Consider making a cup of tea. You do not need to invent the process from scratch. You know that a cup is needed. You know where the kettle is. You know how to fill it. You know that water becomes hot. You know what happens next. The knowledge is woven into a familiar sequence. Much of everyday life depends on these learned patterns. Getting dressed, brushing your teeth, using a phone, driving a familiar route, opening a door, preparing food. The brain turns repeated experiences into efficient routines. This allows attention to be used for other things. You do not need to consciously supervise every tiny movement. Your body and brain have learned together. There is something wonderfully peaceful about that. So much of life is carried by knowledge that has already been learned. You can simply do it. You can walk. You can breathe. You can recognize. You can reach. You can speak. The nervous system has become familiar with countless patterns. And beneath conscious thought, those patterns continue to guide behavior. But memory does not always become stronger simply because something happened many times. Attention matters. If your mind is somewhere else, you may experience something without forming a strong memory of it. Think about walking down a familiar street. You may pass dozens of buildings. You may not remember the color of every door. You may not remember every person you passed. You may not remember the exact shape of every cloud. The brain does not treat all of these details equally. Attention helps determine what receives deeper processing. When something captures your attention, more neural resources can become involved in processing it. Perhaps you see a bright red bicycle. You notice it. You look at it. Maybe you wonder who owns it. That bicycle now has a better chance of becoming part of your memory than the hundreds of ordinary objects you barely noticed. Emotion can also influence memory. Strongly emotional experiences are often remembered differently from ordinary events. The brain systems involved in emotion interact with systems involved in memory. The amygdala, a small structure deep within the brain, plays an important role in processing emotional significance. When something feels important, the brain may treat it differently. This can help explain why certain moments remain unusually vivid. A wedding, a graduation, the birth of a child, a major journey, a sudden surprise, a deeply meaningful conversation. These experiences may become landmarks in the landscape of a person's life, not because the brain stores them like perfect recordings, but because many systems were engaged at once. Perception, attention, emotion, meaning, context, and memory. Yet emotional memory is not always perfectly accurate. A vivid memory can still contain errors. The feeling of certainty is not the same thing as proof. This is important because memory can feel incredibly convincing. When a remembered scene appears in the mind, it can seem as though we are looking backward through a window, but the brain is reconstructing. It is bringing together stored patterns. It is filling in details. It is using context. It is generating the experience of remembering. That process is incredibly useful, but it is not identical to replaying the original event. Imagine an old photograph that has faded at the edges. The central shape remains, but some details are difficult to see. Now imagine that each time you look at the photograph, you describe what you think is happening. Over time, the story surrounding the photograph may become richer than the photograph itself. Memory can sometimes work in a similar way. The original experience leaves traces. Later knowledge becomes connected to those traces. Stories are told, details are discussed. New information becomes associated with the old. Eventually, the memory you experience may contain a mixture of the original event and everything that happened afterward. This is one reason scientists treat eyewitness memory with care. Human memory is powerful, but it is not a video camera. And perhaps there is something comforting about that. You do not need every detail of your life preserved perfectly. A human mind is not designed to be an archive of every second. It is designed to help you live, to recognize, to learn, to adapt, to predict, to make decisions, to understand other people, to carry important lessons forward, and sometimes to let things go. Forgetting is one of the most important parts of memory. It can feel frustrating when you forget a name, or lose track of a thought, or cannot remember where you placed something. But forgetting can also be useful if every memory remained equally accessible. The brain would struggle to decide what matters. Imagine trying to remember every meal you have ever eaten, every shirt you wore, every staircase you climbed, every conversation you overheard, every streetlight you passed, every advertisement you saw, every sound from every morning. The sheer volume would be overwhelming. Instead, memories compete. Some become stronger, others become weaker, some become difficult to retrieve, and some may eventually become almost impossible to access consciously. This is not necessarily a flaw. It is part of having a flexible mind. There are many reasons a memory may become difficult to retrieve. Sometimes the information was never encoded strongly. Sometimes other memories interfere. Sometimes the cues needed for retrieval are missing. Sometimes the memory has changed. Sometimes the brain simply cannot access it at that moment. This explains a strangely familiar experience. The tip of the tongue. You know that you know the word. You can almost feel it. You may know the first letter. You may know what the word means. You may even know how many syllables it has. But the word itself refuses to appear. Then, perhaps 10 minutes later, while you are thinking about something completely different, it suddenly arrives. There it is, the missing word, waiting quietly in the background. This tells us something important. Not being able to retrieve information immediately does not necessarily mean the information has been completely erased. Memory and access are not the same thing. The brain needs pathways, cues, connections. Sometimes the right cue opens the door. A familiar smell can be one of the strongest cues. Perhaps you smell something baking, and suddenly you are standing in an old kitchen. The kitchen may have been gone for decades. The people may have changed. The house may no longer exist. But the scent provides a bridge. Part of the reason smell can be such a powerful trigger is that the neural pathways involved in olfaction have close connections with brain regions involved in emotion and memory. A smell can sometimes reach these systems in a way that feels immediate and strangely intimate. You do not necessarily think, "I remember the kitchen." Instead, the kitchen seems to arrive. For a brief moment, the past becomes present in your imagination. The same can happen with music. A melody begins, perhaps only a few notes, and suddenly, a whole period of life seems to open. Music can carry rhythm, emotion, language, context, movement, and repetition. Songs are often experienced many times. They become associated with particular people and places. That is why a melody from childhood may remain surprisingly accessible decades later. You may forget countless conversations from the same year, yet remember the chorus of a song almost perfectly. The brain is not choosing randomly. Different kinds of information are learned through different patterns of repetition and association. And now, let the music of memory become quiet again. You do not need to chase any particular memory. Let them float. A face, a room, a summer afternoon, a distant voice, a road, a song, a smell, a feeling. They can drift past like small lights on dark water. You can simply watch them, and then let them disappear. There is another remarkable question. Why do some memories seem to last for decades? We know that long-term memories can be remarkably durable, but the exact biological mechanisms supporting every kind of long-term memory are complex. One important process involves changes in synaptic strength. Scientists have studied a phenomenon called long-term potentiation, or LTP. In simple terms, certain patterns of activity can make communication between particular neurons more effective for a period of time. This does not explain all of memory. Memory involves many systems and many biological processes. But synaptic plasticity provides an important model for how experience can produce lasting changes in neural networks. The brain changes because of what happens to it, and those changes can influence what happens next. Think again about the path through the grass. The first crossing is difficult. The second is easier. The 10th is easier still. The path becomes familiar. In the brain, repeated patterns of activity can produce changes that make certain future patterns easier to generate. This is part of what learning means biologically. The nervous system has been altered by experience, and that is why practice matters. A pianist does not become skilled simply by reading about piano playing. The nervous system must participate. The fingers move. The auditory system listens. The visual system reads. The brain predicts. Errors are detected. Movements are adjusted. The pattern is repeated. Over time, the system changes. Skill emerges gradually. The final performance may look effortless, but underneath that apparent simplicity is a long history of practice. The same principle appears everywhere in life. A child learning language, a student learning mathematics, a person learning to cook, a driver learning a new road, a scientist learning a new method, a musician learning a melody, a person learning the habits of a new home. The brain is constantly adapting. It is not simply holding information. It is becoming different because of information. And perhaps that is the deepest meaning of memory. Memory is not only about the past. Memory is the way the past continues to influence the present. Every skill you have learned, every language you speak, every familiar route, every person you recognize, every lesson you carry, every expectation you have about the world is shaped in part by what came before. Your past is not sitting somewhere far behind you. Pieces of it are active within the way you experience this moment. Now, as the night grows quieter, imagine all of that activity slowing into a peaceful rhythm. The pathways remain, the networks remain, but you do not need to think about them. Your brain knows how to rest. Your body knows how to breathe. Your heart continues its steady rhythm. And while you sleep, the quiet work of memory continues. Gently, patiently, without asking anything from you. You can let the next thought drift away, then the next, and perhaps, somewhere between one thought and another, you will begin to feel the boundary between waking and dreaming become softer. The room may seem farther away, the voice may seem quieter, and your memories, those countless little traces of a lifetime, can simply settle into the darkness, like leaves resting on still water, like stars reflected in a quiet lake, like distant lights fading softly beyond the horizon. There is nowhere else you need to be, nothing else you need to remember. For tonight, you can simply rest and let your remarkable brain do what it has been doing for thousands of generations. Learning, connecting, organizing, remembering, forgetting, and dreaming while you sleep. And so, as the night continues, we can wander a little farther into the hidden architecture of memory. Imagine that the brain is a vast landscape beneath a dark, peaceful sky. There are no walls around it, no obvious shelves, no single room where every memory waits. Instead, there are pathways crossing pathways, networks touching other networks, patterns becoming active, quiet, and active again. Some paths are familiar, some are rarely visited, and some seem to disappear entirely, only to become visible again when the right moment arrives. One of the most fascinating things about remembering is that a memory does not always return in the same form. Sometimes it arrives as an image, sometimes as a sound, sometimes as a feeling, sometimes as a simple fact, and sometimes as a complete little world. You might remember standing outside a house many years ago. You can almost feel the temperature of the air. You may remember the color of the sky. Perhaps there was a tree nearby. Perhaps someone was speaking. Perhaps there was a smell of food coming from inside. You are not consciously searching through a list of details. Instead, The experience seems to assemble itself. One piece helps bring another, and another, until the scene becomes recognizable. This is the reconstructive nature of memory. The brain is not simply retrieving a frozen object. It is rebuilding a pattern. That reconstruction depends on many different parts of the brain. The hippocampus is especially important for forming and retrieving memories of events and places. But it does not work alone. The cerebral cortex contains enormous networks involved in perception, knowledge, language, attention, and many other functions. Different aspects of an experience can become represented across different regions. The sight of a face, the sound of a voice, the meaning of a sentence, the emotional significance of an event. These are not necessarily stored in one tiny location. Instead, they are distributed across interacting systems. This makes the brain less like a filing cabinet and more like a living network. Think of a constellation. From the ground, you see separate points of light. One star is here, another is there, another is farther away, but your mind connects them. It creates a pattern. Memory can work in a similar way. A particular person may be represented through many connected elements. Their face, their voice, their name, their favorite food, the place where you met, a conversation you once shared, a feeling associated with them. None of these pieces has to contain the entire person. Together, they create something meaningful. And when one part becomes active, the others may follow. This is why a single word can sometimes unlock an entire memory. Perhaps someone mentions the name of an old town. At first, it is only a word. Then you remember a road, then a building, then a particular afternoon, then the people who were with you, then perhaps the weather, then a feeling you had forgotten. One small cue, and a much larger network becomes active. The memory was not necessarily sitting there waiting in perfect form. The cue helped your brain reconstruct it. Scientists have spent many years studying these networks. They have discovered that memory is deeply connected with prediction. The brain is constantly using past experience to anticipate what may happen next. When you enter your kitchen, you already know where the refrigerator is. When you hear a familiar person's voice, you have expectations about what that person may say. When you walk toward a familiar staircase, your brain already expects the next step. This means memory is woven into ordinary perception. You do not experience the world entirely from scratch. You experience the present through a brain that has a history. Imagine walking through a forest you have visited before. The trees are not strangers. The path is familiar. You know that a stream is somewhere ahead. You expect the ground to become damp. You know the trail will eventually curve. Your previous experience changes the way you experience the current walk. The past has become part of the present. That is memory at work, quietly, almost invisibly. And there is something else worth noticing. Memory can influence what we pay attention to. If you know that a certain sound usually means something important, you may notice it quickly. If you have learned to recognize a particular bird, you may suddenly begin seeing that bird everywhere. The birds were already there, but your brain has become better at detecting them. Learning changes perception itself. The world has not necessarily changed. Your nervous system has. This is one reason learning can feel like discovering a new world. A person who knows nothing about stars may look into the night sky and see countless points of light. An astronomer may see planets, constellations, stellar colors, galaxies, and patterns that are invisible to an untrained eye. The same sky is above them both. But memory and knowledge change what the brain can recognize. Experience teaches the nervous system what to notice. And perhaps you have felt this yourself. You learn a new word, and suddenly you seem to encounter it everywhere. You learn the name of a plant, and begin noticing that plant along roadsides. You learn how a certain machine works, and suddenly its moving parts seem obvious. Nothing magical has happened to the outside world. Your brain has simply acquired new patterns. It has created new connections. This brings us back to sleep, because learning is not necessarily finished when the lesson ends. The brain continues processing information after the experience is over. During sleep, patterns of neural activity can reflect aspects of waking experience. Researchers have found evidence that memories can be reactivated during sleep. In some circumstances, this reactivation appears to contribute to memory consolidation. It is as though the brain is quietly revisiting parts of the day, not as a conscious story, but through patterns of activity. The details of this process are complex. Scientists are still learning how different stages of sleep contribute to different kinds of memory. But one idea has become increasingly clear. Sleep is not simply time when memory stops. Sleep can be an active part of remembering. You might imagine the brain as a librarian working after the library is closed. The doors are locked. The lights are dim. The visitors have gone home. But inside, someone is still quietly arranging the shelves. Some books are moved closer together. Some are placed farther away. Some are connected by references. Some are no longer needed. The librarian does not keep every scrap of paper. The goal is not to preserve everything. The goal is to maintain a useful collection. It is only an analogy, but a peaceful one. And perhaps tonight, your brain is doing its own quiet organizing. There is another reason sleep matters. The brain itself changes its activity dramatically across the night. We move through different stages of sleep. Some stages are characterized by slower brain waves. Others include periods of rapid eye movement or REM sleep. Memory processing appears to involve several stages and systems rather than one simple mechanism. Different kinds of learning may benefit from different aspects of sleep. For example, sleep has been linked with the consolidation of declarative memories, such as facts and events. It also supports certain forms of procedural learning. The exact contribution can vary depending on what was learned and how it was learned. So there is no single moment during the night when all memories are simply filed away. The process is more like a long conversation between brain systems. And while that conversation continues, you can rest. There is nothing you need to control. Your brain already knows the rhythm. Day arrives. Experience arrives. Night arrives. The body rests. The brain reorganizes. Then morning comes again. And with each cycle, you become slightly different from the person you were before. Not because your personality suddenly changes, but because experience continually reshapes the nervous system. Consider a child learning to read. At first, letters may look like strange symbols. A page is full of unfamiliar marks. The child has to concentrate. Slowly, patterns become familiar. A letter becomes recognizable, then a sound, then a word, then a sentence. Eventually, reading can become almost effortless. The eyes move across the page. Meaning appears. The brain has built a network that connects visual patterns with sounds, language, and concepts. Years of practice have changed the system. What once required enormous effort can become automatic. That is the remarkable flexibility of the human brain. The same thing happens when we learn a language. At first, unfamiliar sounds may seem difficult to separate. A native speaker can hear distinctions that a beginner barely notices. With experience, the brain becomes more sensitive to relevant patterns. It learns what matters. It becomes less responsive to distinctions that are not useful. Learning is not simply adding information. Sometimes it is also learning what to ignore. And that idea brings us back to forgetting. Forgetting can be a form of efficiency. If every detail remained equally strong, the brain would struggle to operate. Instead, memories change with time. Some details become less accessible. General knowledge may remain while specific details fade. You may remember that you once lived in a particular house, without remembering the exact color of every wall. You may remember that you traveled somewhere, without remembering every meal you ate during the trip. You may remember a person clearly, while forgetting the exact words spoken during one conversation. Memory preserves what the brain considers useful, or what happens to remain strongly connected. And sometimes, forgetting protects us from unnecessary noise. Imagine carrying every single conversation of your life with perfect clarity. Every awkward sentence, every advertisement, every passing thought, every meaningless detail. There would be no quiet space. The mind needs room. Forgetting helps create that room. It allows attention to move forward. Yet some memories resist fading. Why? There is no single answer. Repeated retrieval can strengthen memories. Emotional significance can matter. Meaning can matter. Connections to other knowledge can matter. Sleep can matter. The circumstances surrounding learning can matter. And sometimes, we simply do not yet know why one particular memory survives while another disappears. The brain is too complex for a single explanation. But that mystery makes memory even more fascinating. Think about your earliest memories. Perhaps you remember a room, a toy, a relative, a particular smell, a window, a garden, a sound. Early childhood memories can be fragmented. Some may be difficult to place in time. Others may be strongly associated with family stories or photographs. This is part of a broader phenomenon known as childhood or infantile amnesia. Most adults have relatively few detailed autobiographical memories from the earliest years of life. Researchers have proposed several contributing factors. The developing brain is changing rapidly. Language is still developing. The sense of self is developing. Memory systems are maturing. And the way children organize experiences may differ from the way adults later organize autobiographical memories. There is still much to understand, but the basic lesson is clear. Memory changes as the brain itself develops. A newborn brain is not simply a smaller version of an adult brain. It is a rapidly developing system. Connections are forming. Networks are being refined. Sensory experiences are shaping the nervous system. Language is emerging. The child is learning faces, voices, movement, patterns, and relationships. Every ordinary day contains thousands of opportunities for the brain to change. And perhaps that is why childhood can feel so distant. The person you were then and the person you are now share the same continuous biological history. Yet the brain has been remodeled by decades of experience. Connections have strengthened, others have weakened, skills have developed, knowledge has accumulated. Some memories have faded, others have become more meaningful with age. You carry the past, but you are not frozen inside it. This is another beautiful feature of memory. It allows the past to change meaning. An event that once seemed confusing may become understandable years later. A lesson you ignored when you were young may become important later. A place that once seemed ordinary may become precious after you leave it. The facts of the past may remain the same, but the meaning you give them can change. And because memory is connected to meaning, the experience of remembering can change as well. Perhaps you have an old memory that feels different now than it once did. Maybe a childhood house once seemed enormous. Now you know it was small. Maybe a journey once felt endless. Now you realize it lasted only a few hours. Maybe a person seemed mysterious when you were young, and much more understandable later. Your present knowledge becomes part of the way you reconstruct the past. Memory lives in the present. So as you rest, you can let that thought settle gently. You do not have to preserve every memory exactly. You do not have to hold on to every detail. Your brain is not asking you to do that. It is constantly deciding what to strengthen, what to connect, what to weaken, and what to let drift away. Outside, the night may be very quiet now. Perhaps a distant car passes. Perhaps the wind touches a window. Perhaps the room has become completely still. And inside your head, the activity continues. Neurons communicate. Networks shift. Chemical signals rise and fall. Electrical patterns move through circuits. Memories are reactivated. Some connections strengthen. Some information fades. And all of it happens without conscious effort. You can let your attention become lighter. You can stop following every word. If a thought wanders away, let it wander. If an old memory appears, you do not need to examine it. Let it pass. There is no need to open every door in the landscape tonight. Some doors can remain closed. Some paths can remain quiet. Some memories can rest exactly where they are. Because remembering is only one half of the story. The other half is letting go, and the sleeping brain understands both. It remembers, it forgets, it connects, it separates, it strengthens, it softens, all through the long, quiet hours, until morning begins to return. There is another quiet mystery waiting for us. The strange relationship between memory and attention. Because before the brain can remember something clearly, it usually has to give that experience some attention. Not always. Some things can influence us without entering conscious awareness. But for many everyday memories, attention is the doorway. Imagine sitting beside a calm lake. The surface is almost perfectly still. You can see countless small details. A leaf floating near the shore, a distant bird moving between trees, a ripple spreading across the water, a reflection of the moon. But you cannot look closely at everything at once. Your attention is like a small circle of light. Where it rests, the world becomes more detailed. Everything outside that circle becomes softer. The brain works in a similar way. At every moment, far more information reaches your senses than you can consciously process. Attention helps select what receives deeper processing. And what receives deeper processing often has a better chance of becoming part of a lasting memory. Think about the last time you met someone new. You may have heard their name, but perhaps you were distracted. There was music playing, Other people were talking. Your phone was vibrating. Your mind was already thinking about something else. A few minutes later, you realize you have forgotten the person's name. It may not be that the memory disappeared. The name may never have been strongly encoded in the first place. Your brain heard the sound, but attention did not remain with it long enough for the information to become firmly connected. This is one reason people can sincerely say, "I heard you, but I didn't remember you telling me." The ears received the sound. The mind was somewhere else. Now imagine the opposite. Someone tells you something deeply important. You listen carefully. You look at their face. You notice their expression. You hear the exact words. You think about what they mean. Perhaps you repeat the information later. Now the experience has many connections: sound, meaning, emotion, visual details, context, repetition. All of these can help create a richer memory. Memory does not happen in isolation. It grows inside a network of associations. And this is where meaning becomes especially important. The human brain is extraordinarily good at remembering information that fits into a meaningful structure. Imagine hearing a list of random words: tree, window, 7, cloud, bottle, river, chair. It may be difficult to remember all of them. Now imagine those words appearing inside a story. A traveler walks through a forest. He reaches a river. Near the water stands an old wooden chair. Beside the chair is a bottle. Above him, clouds move across the sky. Suddenly, the words have relationships. They belong somewhere. The brain can connect them. The information becomes easier to organize. This is one reason stories can be such powerful tools for learning. A story gives information structure, and the brain loves structure. Our ancestors depended on this ability. Imagine living thousands of years ago. You need to know where water can be found, which plants are safe to eat, which paths lead home, where dangerous animals have been seen, when certain seasonal changes occur, which members of the community can be trusted. These are not random facts. They are connected to survival. The brain is naturally sensitive to information that has consequences. Even today, the same nervous system carries that ancient history. We may no longer need to remember where predators hide, but the brain still pays special attention to information that seems important. Emotion can act like a signal. Something matters. Something is unusual. Something needs to be noticed. The amygdala is part of a larger network involved in processing emotional significance. When an experience carries emotional weight, the brain can respond differently than it does to an ordinary event. This does not mean every emotional memory is perfectly accurate. Quite the opposite. Emotion can make a memory feel vivid while some details remain uncertain or become distorted. The feeling of remembering strongly and the accuracy of every detail are two different things. Imagine a storm passing over a quiet landscape. The storm is dramatic. The wind moves through the trees. Rain strikes the roof. Thunder rolls across the sky. You may remember that evening for years, but years later, you may not remember exactly what time the storm began. You may misremember which day of the week it was. You may combine details from different storms. The central experience remains, while the edges become less precise. This is a common feature of human memory. The brain tends to preserve meaningful patterns, not perfect recordings of every detail. And there is something beautiful about that. A memory does not have to preserve every grain of sand to preserve the shape of a beach. You may forget thousands of tiny details from an important period of your life. Yet remember how that period felt. You may not remember every conversation, but remember the person. You may not remember every road, but remember the journey. You may not remember every morning, but remember the home where those mornings happened. Memory often keeps the larger pattern. This brings us to a fascinating distinction between familiarity and recollection. Sometimes something feels familiar, even when you cannot explain why. You enter a building for the first time, and somehow it feels as though you have seen it before. You hear a melody, and it seems strangely known. You meet a person, and their face feels familiar, but you cannot retrieve a specific memory connected to the experience. Familiarity can occur without detailed recollection. The brain can recognize that something resembles previous experience, without producing a full story about when or where you encountered it. Recollection is different. Recollection brings details. You remember where you were, who was there, what happened, what you were doing, perhaps even what the weather felt like. These different forms of remembering can operate together. Sometimes one is strong while the other is weak. You may recognize a face without remembering the person's name. You may know a song without remembering when you first heard it. You may remember an event without immediately recognizing every person involved. Memory is wonderfully layered. And now, let us return to the quiet landscape. Imagine walking along a long path. Every few steps, you pass a small lantern. Some lanterns glow brightly. Others are dim. Some are hidden behind trees. The brighter lanterns might represent memories that are easily accessible. The dimmer ones may be memories that are harder to retrieve. But brightness is not the same as importance. A memory can be deeply meaningful and still difficult to access. Another can be vivid simply because it has been repeatedly revisited. This is why repetition can be powerful. Every time you retrieve a memory, you activate part of the network associated with it. Repetition can strengthen access, but repetition can also introduce changes. If you repeatedly tell the same story, you may gradually remember the story you have told, rather than every detail of the original experience. The story becomes part of the memory. The brain is not trying to deceive you. It is simply doing what it normally does, reconstructing the past using the information available now. This also explains why memory can be influenced by suggestion. Suppose someone confidently tells you that a particular detail happened. If the detail fits the general story, your brain may incorporate it. Over time, you might genuinely feel as though you remember it. This is one reason scientists have discovered that confidence and accuracy are not always perfectly linked. A person can be extremely confident in a memory that contains errors. Another person may be uncertain about a memory that is actually accurate. The subjective feeling of remembering is not a direct measurement of truth. And yet, memory remains extraordinarily useful. You would not want a perfect recording of every moment. You want a system that extracts meaning, a system that learns patterns, a system that helps you predict, a system that allows you to adapt. The brain sacrifices perfect detail in exchange for flexibility. That trade-off may be one of the reasons human memory works as it does. Now consider something as simple as learning a route. The first time you travel somewhere unfamiliar, you may pay attention to everything. Which turn? Which building? Which traffic light? Which bridge? Where's the parking area? After several trips, the route becomes familiar. You no longer need to think about every turn. The brain has learned the sequence. This frees your attention. You can think about a conversation, listen to music, notice the weather, or simply enjoy the journey. Learning reduces the amount of conscious effort required. This is a theme that appears again and again in neuroscience. Practice can transform effortful behavior into something more automatic. At first, the brain needs more attention. With repetition, the relevant networks become more efficient. The skill becomes smoother. The behavior becomes easier. The memory becomes more accessible. And what once felt difficult can eventually feel natural. Think about typing on a keyboard. When you first learned, you may have searched for individual letters. You looked down. You thought about where your fingers should go. Now, if you type regularly, your fingers can move almost without conscious supervision. The memory of the keyboard layout has become deeply integrated with movement. Your eyes read the word. Your brain prepares the sequence. Your fingers move. The result appears. All of this can happen remarkably quickly. The same principle applies to speech. You do not consciously plan every movement of your tongue and lips. You know how to form familiar words. You know how sentences generally flow. You have learned thousands of patterns. Language is one of the greatest examples of memory becoming invisible. You are using memories constantly, without feeling as though you are remembering. In that sense, memory is everywhere. It is inside your habits, inside your expectations, inside your skills, inside your knowledge, inside your relationships, inside the way you understand the world. You may rarely notice it, because good memory often feels like ordinary life. Now, as you become more relaxed, notice the difference between remembering and thinking. They overlap, but they are not identical. You can think about something you have never experienced. You can imagine a completely fictional place. You can combine familiar objects into something new. Memory provides some of the materials, but imagination can rearrange them. This ability is deeply important. It allows humans to create, to plan, to invent, to imagine possibilities, to ask, what if? Suppose you are planning a journey to a place you have never visited. You have never walked those streets, but you may remember other cities. You know what airports are like. You know what roads look like. You know how hotels work. You have memories of packing. You have memories of maps. You have memories of previous trips. Your brain combines these experiences. From pieces of the past, it constructs an image of the future. Memory becomes a foundation for imagination. This connection between remembering and imagining has fascinated neuroscientists. The hippocampus and related networks appear to contribute not only to remembering past experiences, but also to constructing possible scenes. That makes sense when you think about survival. A creature that can remember where danger occurred can benefit from imagining what might happen next. A human who remembers previous journeys can imagine a new route. A person who remembers past conversations can anticipate how another conversation might unfold. The past becomes a map for possibilities. And perhaps this is one reason sleep is so important. During sleep, the brain has time away from the constant demands of conscious interaction. It can continue its internal activity. Memories can be processed. Associations can shift. Information can become integrated. The boundaries between memory, emotion, and imagination can become less rigid. And during dreaming, the brain can create entire experiences from fragments of memory and perception. A dream may contain a familiar room, but the room is different. A familiar person, but they are somewhere unexpected. A real street, but it leads somewhere impossible. Dreams reveal something about the creative nature of the brain. The mind can take pieces of experience and rearrange them into new worlds. Perhaps tonight, as you drift toward sleep, your own brain will begin doing something similar. A sound from today may blend with an image from years ago. A familiar place may appear in a dream. A face may emerge without explanation. A forgotten memory may float briefly into awareness, then disappear again. You do not need to understand it. Dreams do not need to make sense. They are simply another expression of the brain's remarkable ability to generate experience. And now, let the thought of memory become softer. You have spent your entire life surrounded by memories. Some were formed before you could speak. Some were created only hours ago. Some may remain with you for decades. Others may disappear by morning. And that is all right. The mind does not need to preserve everything. It only needs to keep enough to help you remain yourself, to learn, to adapt, to recognize, to love, to navigate, and to continue. Imagine the lanterns along the path again. One by one, they become dimmer. The path is still there, but you no longer need to see every step. The night is gentle. The air is cool. The world is quiet. Your thoughts are slowing. Your breathing is easy. And somewhere deep inside your brain, the networks continue their silent work. No effort, no urgency, just biology, moving through its natural rhythms. There is a quiet rhythm beneath everything you remember, a rhythm that begins with experience, continues through learning, and sometimes carries information forward for years. Tonight, we can follow that rhythm a little farther, slowly, without hurry, as though we were floating down a calm river beneath a moonlit sky. One of the simplest forms of memory begins with recognition. You see something, and your brain compares it with what it has encountered before. A familiar tree, a familiar street, a familiar face, a familiar sound. The comparison may happen so quickly that you never notice it. You simply know, this is familiar. That feeling of familiarity is the result of an enormous amount of previous learning. Your brain has spent years becoming familiar with the world. It has learned the shape of doors, the sound of footsteps, the appearance of clouds, the movement of traffic, the expressions on people's faces, the sound of your own name. These things become easier to recognize because the nervous system has encountered them again and again. But recognition is only one part of memory. There is also recall. Recall means bringing information back without the original thing necessarily being present. You can think about your childhood home even when you are hundreds or thousands of miles away. You can remember someone's name when they are not standing in front of you. You can picture a road you traveled years ago. You can describe the taste of a familiar meal without eating it. The physical world is absent, but your brain can reconstruct aspects of the experience. That is an extraordinary ability. Imagine closing your eyes. Now picture a blue ocean. You do not need an ocean in front of you. Your brain can create an internal representation. Perhaps you imagine waves, perhaps a horizon, perhaps sunlight reflecting across the water. Maybe you can hear the imagined sound of surf. This is not the same as actually seeing an ocean. But memory and imagination can generate a surprisingly rich internal experience. The brain can work with information even when the original sensory source is no longer present. This ability becomes especially important when we think about language. You can read the word ocean, and your mind immediately connects it with countless concepts: water, waves, salt, depth, boats, beaches, storms, blue light, perhaps a personal memory, perhaps a place you once visited. A single word can activate a surprisingly large network. This is because knowledge is interconnected. The meaning of a word does not live alone. It exists within a web of relationships. The word winter might bring snow, cold air, dark evenings, warm blankets, a particular holiday, a person's face, a childhood home, the sound of rain, the smell of wood smoke. The brain builds these associations gradually. Every experience adds another thread, and over many years, the network becomes enormous. This is why learning becomes easier when new information connects to something you already know. Suppose you are learning about a completely unfamiliar scientific idea. At first, it may feel difficult. There are no mental hooks. Nothing seems familiar. But once you connect the idea to something you already understand, it becomes easier. You have given the new information a place to belong. The brain is very good at learning relationships. Think of a tree. A new branch grows from an older branch. The branch connects to the trunk. The trunk connects to the roots. A single new branch does not exist independently. It becomes part of the whole structure. Knowledge can grow in a similar way. New ideas become connected to old ones. The richer the network, the more ways there are to approach the information later. And this brings us to one of the most powerful features of memory: retrieval. It is not enough for information to have been learned. You need to be able to access it when it matters. That is why testing yourself can be useful when learning. When you try to retrieve information, you are exercising the pathway that leads back to it. Simply seeing information again can be helpful, but actively recalling it can provide a different kind of learning experience. You are asking the brain to reconstruct the information, and that act of retrieval can strengthen later access. Imagine a path through a forest. You can look at a map of the path. You can walk the path. These are different experiences. Reading information gives you one kind of familiarity. Retrieving information asks your brain to travel the path. The more useful paths you have, the easier it can become to reach the destination. But memory does not grow endlessly stronger. There are limits. Interference can occur. Old information can sometimes make new information harder to remember. New information can sometimes interfere with older information. This is one reason names can become confusing. You learn several new people's names in one evening. Later, the names seem to blend together. The problem is not necessarily that the brain failed to learn. The memories may simply compete for retrieval. Imagine several similar paths through a forest. They begin in the same place. They cross near the same trees. They lead toward different destinations. If you are not careful, you may take the wrong path. Memory can sometimes work this way. Similar experiences create overlapping patterns. When you later try to retrieve one, another may become active. This can happen with passwords, with phone numbers, with names, with dates, with similar events. The brain is constantly balancing similarity and difference. It needs to recognize what belongs together, while also keeping important distinctions. And this is where context becomes powerful again. Suppose you meet someone named Daniel at a quiet bookstore. You talk about astronomy. You both laugh about a book on the counter. Later, you see Daniel again in a completely different setting. The context has changed. The memory may be harder to retrieve immediately, but then you notice the same book, and suddenly the connection returns. The cue has reopened the network. This is why context can serve as a retrieval key. Places, sounds, smells, people, emotions, words, even the internal state of the body can sometimes become associated with memories. The brain stores experience in context. When some of that context returns, retrieval can become easier. There is an especially interesting phenomenon called context-dependent memory. In simple terms, information learned in one environment or state can sometimes be easier to remember when similar cues are present during retrieval. The effect is not absolute. It varies depending on the situation, but it demonstrates something important. Memory is influenced by the circumstances surrounding it. You are not simply remembering information. You are remembering information within a world. Imagine studying beside a window while rain falls outside. The room is cool. The glass is covered with tiny droplets. A distant sound of traffic comes and goes. Later, you hear rain again. Perhaps the old material feels slightly more familiar. The rain has become part of the context surrounding the learning. A small sensory cue may help reactivate part of the network. This is one reason smells and music can feel so powerful. They are not just sensory experiences. They can become anchors. They can hold pieces of context. A melody can carry an entire period of life. A scent can transport you to an old room. A sound can remind you of a person. The cue does not contain the entire memory. It provides a route toward it. Now, let us travel deeper into the biology. Inside every neuron are complex molecular systems. Signals arrive. Signals are integrated. Chemical messengers are released. Other cells respond. Genes can influence how neurons grow and function. Proteins help maintain cellular structures. Synapses can become stronger or weaker. Memory is ultimately connected to physical changes in living tissue. Yet the exact biological details are extraordinarily complicated. There is no single molecule called the memory molecule. There is no single location where all memories are stored. Instead, memory emerges from changes across networks. This is one of the great themes of neuroscience. Complex experiences can arise from simple biological components interacting in enormous numbers. A single neuron is not a memory. A single synapse is not a childhood. A single electrical signal is not a song. But billions of cells working together can produce experiences rich enough to fill an entire lifetime. Imagine looking at one grain of sand on a beach. It is tiny, almost meaningless by itself. But step back, and you see the coastline. Step back farther, and you see the ocean. Memory is similar. Individual biological events are microscopic. Their combined activity creates something enormous. A person's remembered life. And yet, the brain is constantly changing. This means memory is never entirely separate from the present. Every new experience can potentially interact with older knowledge. Learning something new can change how you understand something old. A new discovery can alter the meaning of an earlier experience. A conversation today can change how you interpret a conversation from years ago. The past remains, but the mind looking at the past has changed. Perhaps this is why people sometimes say, "I never thought about it that way before." The event itself may be unchanged, but the network surrounding it has expanded. New knowledge creates new connections. New connections change interpretation, and memory is part of that process. There is another gentle mystery here. Sometimes a memory seems to return after many years. Why did it come back now? Perhaps something in the present provided the right cue. A smell, a sound, a face, a place, a phrase, a season, a particular kind of light. The brain is constantly searching for relationships. When the right connection appears, an old pattern may become active again. You may suddenly remember a classroom from childhood. You can see the windows, the desks, the teacher's position at the front. Perhaps you remember sunlight across the floor. You had not thought about that classroom in years, but a smell, or a sound, or a phrase opened the door. The memory was not necessarily gone. It was simply quiet. And sometimes, even quiet memories can become meaningful again. You may remember something that once seemed ordinary. A family meal, a walk, a conversation, a rainy afternoon. At the time, you did not know it would become a memory. That is one of the strange things about living. We do not know which ordinary moments will become important later. A completely normal evening may become precious after many years. Perhaps this is because memory is selective. It does not preserve every moment equally. Some experiences become landmarks. Others become background. The brain continually builds a hierarchy of importance. Not perfectly, not consciously, but continuously. And sleep may help shape that hierarchy. During sleep, the brain is not simply replaying the day in chronological order. There is no evidence that the sleeping brain simply watches a complete movie of everything that happened. Instead, memory processing appears to involve selective reactivation and interaction among brain systems. Some information may be strengthened. Some may become integrated. Some may be reduced. The sleeping brain is doing something more subtle than simple playback. You can imagine a gardener walking through a quiet garden at night. They do not water every leaf equally. They tend certain plants. Remove what is no longer needed. Allow some growth. Prune other areas. The garden changes gradually. Again, this is only an analogy. The real biology is far more intricate, but the image captures something important. The brain is constantly maintaining itself. And while all of that happens, you are allowed to rest. You do not need to remember the science. You do not need to remember the story. You do not need to hold on to any sentence. Let the information move past you, like clouds crossing a dark sky. Perhaps your breathing has slowed. Perhaps your muscles feel heavier. Maybe your thoughts have begun to wander. That is perfectly natural. Attention does not need to remain fixed. In fact, as sleep approaches, the organized stream of conscious thought begins to change. Images may appear. Fragments may connect. Ideas may become less logical. The boundary between memory and imagination may become softer. And eventually, you may stop noticing the story altogether. That is all right. The brain does not need your supervision. Your nervous system has been doing this work since before you were aware of it. Learning, adapting, remembering, forgetting, predicting, dreaming. So let yourself drift now, along that quiet river. The water is dark. The surface reflects faint moonlight. There are trees along the shore. Their leaves move gently in the night air. No one is asking you to go anywhere. There is no destination, only the slow movement of the water and the soft rhythm of breathing. Behind you are the memories of the day. Farther away are the memories of months and years. Some are clear, some are faint, some are hidden, some may return tomorrow. Others may remain quiet for a long time. You do not need to choose. You do not need to search. Let them all remain where they are. The night is becoming quieter now, and somewhere inside the sleeping brain, the great network of memory continues its slow, invisible work. We have already seen how experiences can leave traces, how attention can help shape those traces, how repetition can strengthen pathways, and how sleep can help the brain reorganize what was learned. Now, let us wander into another fascinating part of the story, the relationship between memory and emotion. Think of a moment from your own life that still carries a feeling. Perhaps it is not even a particularly dramatic memory. Maybe it is a quiet afternoon, a family meal, a walk beside someone you cared about, a child's laughter, a conversation in a parked car, a summer evening when the air was warm and the sky seemed unusually clear. When you remember it, you may not simply remember what happened. You may remember how it felt. That feeling is part of the memory, and the brain systems involved in emotion communicate closely with systems involved in learning and memory. One structure that often appears in this story is the amygdala. The amygdala is a small group of nuclei deep within the temporal lobes. It is involved in processing emotionally significant information. It does not simply create fear. Its functions are much broader. It helps the brain evaluate significance, especially when something matters emotionally, something unexpected, something rewarding, something threatening, something socially important, something that deserves attention. Imagine walking through a quiet forest. The trees are still. The air is cool. You hear a sound somewhere behind you. Your attention immediately shifts. You listen. The sound may turn out to be nothing important. Perhaps a branch moved in the wind. But for a moment, your brain treated the information as potentially significant. That is part of the nervous system's protective design. It is constantly asking, does this matter? And memories can become stronger when the answer is yes. This is one reason emotionally important events can remain vivid. The brain is not treating every moment equally. A routine trip to the grocery store may leave only a vague memory. But if something surprising happens, perhaps you meet someone unexpected or receive life-changing news, the experience may become much more memorable. Attention increases, emotion increases, physiological arousal may increase. Multiple brain systems become engaged. The event becomes marked as important. Yet there is a subtle point here. A strong emotional response does not guarantee perfect memory. In fact, some details may become less reliable during highly emotional situations. You may remember the central event clearly, while remembering peripheral details inaccurately. The brain is prioritizing what seems important. It is not necessarily recording every detail with equal precision. Imagine a sudden flash of lightning. For an instant, The whole landscape is illuminated, but your eyes do not necessarily record every leaf. You notice the most striking features: the shape of the trees, the bright horizon, the sudden change in light. Memory can work in a somewhat similar way during emotionally intense moments. The central meaning can become especially strong, while smaller details remain uncertain. This balance between emotional importance and detailed accuracy is useful to understand. A memory can be vivid and still imperfect. A person can be certain and still mistaken about some details. The brain's confidence in a memory and the historical accuracy of every part of that memory are not identical things. Now, let us move gently toward another important idea. Memory can be changed by later experience. This may sound surprising. You might imagine that once something has been stored, it simply remains untouched. But memories are not completely frozen. When a memory is retrieved, some forms of memory may temporarily become more susceptible to change before being stabilized again. This broad process is often discussed under the term reconsolidation. Imagine a small path through a garden. You walk along it many times. Each journey leaves small changes. A branch moves, a stone shifts, a patch of soil becomes softer. The path remains recognizable, but it is not physically identical after every journey. Remembering can be somewhat like walking the path again. The memory is brought back into active use. Then it may be stored again. During that process, new information can sometimes become associated with it. This does not mean that every act of remembering rewrites the entire past. Memory is much more stable than that. But it does mean that remembering is an active biological process. The past can be revisited by a brain that has changed since the original experience. And this brings us to the remarkable relationship between memory and identity. Who are you? Part of the answer comes from the present. Your body, your personality, your current thoughts, your relationships. But another part comes from memory. You know that you are the same person who experienced yesterday, because you can connect today's self with yesterday's self. You remember your childhood, your school, your family, your work, your mistakes, your achievements, your ordinary days, your difficult days, your moments of happiness. These memories create continuity. Without autobiographical memory, the experience of personal identity could become profoundly different. You might still have knowledge. You might still learn skills. You might still recognize people. But the story of yourself could become fragmented. This is one reason memory disorders can affect far more than the ability to recall facts. Memory is woven into the sense of who we are. Imagine opening a book. Every chapter describes a different period of your life. The first chapters are far away. The middle chapters contain years of change. The newest chapter is being written now. You do not read the whole book every morning. You simply know that the chapters belong together. Memory gives the feeling of continuity. But the book is not finished. That is important. Your current memories are not the final version of your life story. Every new day adds another chapter. Every experience creates another opportunity for learning. The brain continues changing throughout life. This ability is sometimes described as lifelong neuroplasticity. The brain remains capable of adapting, although the kinds and rates of change can vary across different stages of life. As we age, some forms of memory can change. Certain types of recall may become slower. Names may take longer to retrieve. Learning unfamiliar information may require more repetition. But older adults can retain enormous amounts of knowledge and experience. They may have rich semantic knowledge, deeply practiced skills, and extensive networks of associations. Age does not simply mean more memory or less memory. Different memory abilities change in different ways. Consider vocabulary. A person who has lived for many decades may know thousands of words. They may not retrieve every word instantly, but the network of knowledge can remain remarkably rich. A particular word may be connected to books, conversations, places, professions, family members, and experiences for many years. The network itself can support understanding even when retrieval becomes slower. This is another reason memory is not one thing. When someone says, "My memory is getting worse," that statement can mean many different things. Perhaps they are having trouble remembering names. Perhaps they are forgetting appointments. Perhaps they can remember old events very well, but struggle with recent ones. Perhaps they remember information but have difficulty retrieving it quickly. Different problems can involve different systems. And the science of memory has grown partly because researchers learned to separate these abilities. Memory became easier to understand once scientists stopped treating it as one single mental function. There is working memory, which allows us to hold and manipulate information for a short period. There are long-term memories for facts and events. There are procedural memories for skills. There are forms of implicit learning that influence behavior without requiring conscious recollection. There are systems for spatial knowledge. There are systems involved in emotional learning. All of these interact. Working memory is especially interesting. Imagine holding a phone number in your mind just long enough to dial it. You see the numbers. You repeat them silently. You keep them active. Then the call connects, and the numbers disappear from immediate attention. Working memory has limited capacity. You cannot consciously hold an unlimited amount of information at once. That limitation is useful to remember. The mind is powerful, but conscious attention is narrow. Imagine trying to carry 20 fragile glasses at the same time. You would quickly become overwhelmed. Working memory is somewhat like a small tray. It can hold a limited amount. Other information must remain outside the tray until needed. This is one reason grouping information can help. Instead of remembering individual digits separately, you can organize them into meaningful groups. Instead of treating every word as independent, you can understand the sentence. Meaning reduces the burden on working memory. This principle is everywhere in learning. An experienced chess player does not necessarily see a board as 64 unrelated squares. They recognize patterns. A skilled musician does not see every note as an isolated symbol. They recognize phrases. An experienced reader does not process every letter separately. Words and familiar structures are recognized rapidly. Expertise changes how information is organized, and organization makes memory more efficient. Imagine looking at a forest. A beginner may see hundreds of individual trees. A botanist may immediately recognize species. A forester may notice patterns in growth. A birdwatcher may notice habitats. The landscape is the same, but memory and knowledge change the structure of perception. The brain sees what it has learned to recognize. This is one of the most beautiful things about learning. You are not simply adding facts to an empty container. You are changing the way the world is organized in your mind. The more you learn, the more relationships you can notice. And the more relationships you notice, the easier it can become to understand new information. Knowledge becomes a framework for future learning. Now, let us return to sleep. Perhaps you are already becoming less interested in every sentence. That is exactly what we want. The story can continue quietly in the background. You do not have to follow every detail. Your brain can listen without effort. And perhaps, as you listen, your body is becoming heavier against the bed. Your breathing is slow. Your face is relaxed. Your shoulders are resting. Your hands are still. Sleep itself is a changing state. You do not simply switch from awake to completely inactive. The brain moves through stages. Patterns of electrical activity change. The body changes. Hormonal signals shift. Muscles behave differently. The senses become less responsive to ordinary surroundings. And the brain continues its own internal activity. During non-REM sleep, especially during deeper stages, slow oscillations become prominent in the electrical activity of the cortex. These slow rhythms are part of the normal architecture of deep sleep. They are not signs of the brain shutting down. They are signs of the brain operating in a different mode. The outside world has become less important. Internal coordination becomes more prominent. During certain stages of sleep, the hippocampus can show patterns of activity associated with waking experiences. Researchers have found evidence for coordinated interactions between the hippocampus and neocortex. These interactions are thought to contribute to memory consolidation. Again, the process is not simply copying information from one place to another. It is more like communication between systems. New experiences begin with more temporary representations. Over time, they can become integrated into broader networks of knowledge. Imagine a young tree. At first, it stands alone in a field. Its roots are small. Its branches are few. With time, the roots spread. The branches divide. The tree becomes part of the larger landscape. Memory consolidation can be imagined in a similar way. A new memory begins as something relatively fragile. With repeated processing, sleep, retrieval, and integration with existing knowledge, it can become more deeply connected. The analogy is not a literal description of neurons, but it captures the gradual nature of learning. And sleep may be one of the quiet periods when this integration can happen. The brain is no longer busy responding to every external demand. There are no emails, no traffic decisions, no conversations to follow, no tasks to complete. The mind is turned inward, and while you sleep, the biological systems that support memory continue their work. There is something deeply reassuring about this. Even when you are doing nothing, your brain is not doing nothing. Rest itself is part of the process. Stillness is not emptiness. Sleep is not wasted time. It is part of how a living nervous system maintains itself. So tonight, you can let the day settle. Whatever you learned today, whatever you saw, whatever conversations you had, whatever small experiences passed through your mind, you do not need to organize them consciously. Your brain has its own mechanisms. You can simply rest. Perhaps tomorrow, a small detail from today will return unexpectedly. A phrase, a face, an idea, a sound. You may not know why that particular piece survived, But somewhere in your nervous system, the experience has become connected to something. And perhaps that connection will become useful. Memory is not only about holding on to the past, it is about carrying useful patterns forward. A lesson from yesterday can guide today. A mistake can change tomorrow's behavior. A skill learned years ago can remain available when needed. A familiar face can tell you that you are among people you know. A remembered place can help you find your way. The past quietly guides the present. And now, as the night becomes deeper, you can imagine all of these memories becoming quieter. The faces fade. The places soften. The sounds become distant. The pathways remain, but you no longer need to walk them. The brain can continue without conscious direction. A final thought can rest here. Your memories are not separate from you. They are part of the changing biological story of your brain. Every experience has the potential to leave a trace. Some traces become strong. Some become faint. Some connect with other experiences. Some disappear. And through this constant process, your nervous system adapts to the world. And now, as the night grows deeper, we can follow memory into one of its most mysterious places. The moment when a memory becomes part of a larger understanding. Because remembering one thing and understanding what that thing means are not quite the same. Imagine that you are holding an old photograph. You recognize the people. You recognize the room. You know approximately when it was taken, but perhaps there is something else. A meaning that did not exist when the photograph was first created. Maybe you were too young to understand what was happening. Years later, you see the same photograph again. Now you understand the relationships. You understand the conversation that happened before it. You understand why someone was smiling. You understand why another person looked tired. The image has not changed, but your memory of it has become richer. New knowledge has grown around the old experience. This is one of the remarkable properties of human memory. It does not exist separately from knowledge. Memories become woven into what we already understand. A child may remember a family gathering simply as a room full of people. An adult may remember the same gathering as a complicated moment in family history. The original experience has become connected to decades of additional information. Memory grows through association. Think of a river entering the sea. At first, the river is a distinct stream. Then it meets other currents. Fresh water mixes with salt water. The boundary becomes difficult to see. Memory can become like that. An experience begins as one event. Over time, it mixes with knowledge, emotion, language, later experiences, and everything you have learned since. Eventually, the original event becomes part of a much larger mental landscape. This is why experts often remember information differently from beginners. A beginner may encounter dozens of separate facts. An expert sees relationships. A doctor recognizes patterns and symptoms. A musician recognizes musical structures. An astronomer recognizes patterns in the sky. A historian connects events across decades. A carpenter can look at a piece of wood and immediately notice its grain and structure. Their memories are not simply larger. They are more organized. Experience has created a framework, and frameworks make remembering easier. Imagine trying to memorize 100 random dots. Now imagine those same dots forming a recognizable picture. The second task is easier because the information has structure. The brain is naturally sensitive to patterns. It looks for relationships. It searches for meaning. It compresses information into useful forms. This may help explain why meaningful stories are often easier to remember than disconnected lists. A story has characters, a setting, a sequence, cause and effect, beginnings, changes, consequences. The information is connected. The brain can move from one part to another. And this is exactly what we have been doing tonight. We are not simply listing facts about memory. We are moving through a story, from experience, to attention, to learning, to emotion, to sleep, to dreams, to the quiet biological changes that happen inside the brain. Each idea connects to the next, and perhaps that makes the information easier to follow. But you do not need to remember it. You can simply listen. There is something almost poetic about that. A story about memory, being heard by a brain that may later forget the story, while perhaps remembering a small feeling from it. Maybe tomorrow you will remember one sentence. Maybe you will remember nothing. Both are perfectly fine. The purpose of this moment is not to create a perfect memory. The purpose is simply to rest. Now, let us think about the difference between information and experience. You can know a fact without having personally experienced it. You may know that the moon orbits Earth. You may know that water freezes at a certain temperature under ordinary conditions. You may know the name of a distant city. You may know how a bicycle works. These are forms of knowledge. But remembering the first time you rode a bicycle, that is something different. You remember your own experience, the feeling of balance, the movement. Perhaps someone was holding the back of the bicycle. Perhaps you fell. Perhaps you laughed. Perhaps you were afraid. Perhaps the next attempt went better. The fact and the experience are not the same. Psychologists often distinguish between semantic memory and episodic memory. Semantic memory involves general knowledge, facts, meanings, concepts, words. Episodic memory involves recollections of particular experiences, a specific afternoon, a particular conversation, a journey, a birthday, a moment from school. These systems interact constantly. You need semantic knowledge to understand your experiences, and your experiences help build semantic knowledge. Imagine learning what rain is. A child may first learn the word, rain. Then comes the experience, drops touching the skin, water running down a window, puddles forming on the ground, the sound against a roof. Later, the child learns about clouds, weather, water cycles, storms, temperature. Now the simple word rain belongs to an enormous network. A single concept can contain years of learning. And perhaps this is happening inside your mind right now. Words you hear are connecting with things you already know. You may not consciously notice the connections, but your brain is constantly comparing new information with existing knowledge. Some ideas fit immediately. Others create questions. Some remind you of something else. That is learning in motion. There is also another fascinating form of learning: conditioning. The nervous system can learn that one event predicts another. A particular sound may become associated with food. A place may become associated with safety. A certain environment may become associated with relaxation. These associations can influence behavior without requiring conscious thought. The brain is constantly learning relationships between events. This ability is ancient. Animals use learned associations to navigate their environments. A certain smell may signal food. A particular sound may signal danger. A familiar path may lead toward shelter. A change in light may signal the approaching morning. The nervous system learns what tends to come next. And humans have developed this ability to extraordinary complexity. Think about the sound of an alarm. You may hear it before you are fully awake. Your brain recognizes the pattern immediately. Perhaps you have heard the same sound hundreds of times. The association is strong. The sound means morning, or work, or an appointment, or something that needs attention. The sound itself has become connected to an expected event. Now think about a completely different sound, the gentle sound of rain. Perhaps your brain has learned a different association. Quiet, warmth, a window, a blanket, sleep. The same physical world can create very different internal responses depending on your history. Memory helps give sensory information its meaning. This is why familiar environments can feel comforting. The brain already knows what to expect. The room is predictable. The sounds are known. The path is familiar. There are fewer surprises. Your nervous system can relax because the environment fits its learned model. And perhaps that is one reason bedtime routines can become powerful. A familiar sequence tells the brain that the day is ending. Lights become softer. Activities become quieter. The same room appears. The same bed waits. The same sounds return. Over time, these cues become associated with sleep. The brain begins to recognize the pattern. Night has arrived. It is time to slow down. Nothing magical is required. The nervous system simply learns associations, just as it learns a road, a melody, a face, or a familiar voice. It can learn the rhythm of rest. Now, imagine the brain as a vast night garden. During the day, people walk through it. Some paths become busy. New flowers appear. Leaves fall. Branches move. New footprints cross the soil. Then night arrives. The garden becomes quiet. The visitors leave. And the garden begins its own slow maintenance. Some paths are reinforced. Some are less important. New growth becomes integrated. The landscape changes. Again, it is only an image, but it gives us a peaceful way to think about memory. Sleep is not simply a time when yesterday disappears. It is part of the continuing biological process of adapting to experience. And this is one reason a good night's sleep can influence how we learn. When you are tired, attention can suffer. Learning becomes more difficult. Working memory can become less effective. The brain may have a harder time concentrating on new information. Rest restores the conditions that allow attention and learning to work more effectively. So memory begins even before memory. It begins with the ability to pay attention, to notice, to process, to connect, to understand. And sleep supports the entire system. You may have noticed this in your own life. Sometimes you study something late at night. The information seems impossible. The words blur together. Nothing stays in your mind. Then you sleep. The next day, the same material suddenly feels easier. Not always, but sometimes. Part of the reason may be that sleep has allowed the brain to consolidate learning. Another part may simply be that a rested brain can pay better attention. Either way, rest and memory are deeply connected. And now, we can drift toward another remarkable subject: the relationship between memory and dreams. Dreams are not simply memories, but memories can contribute material to dreams. A dream may contain familiar people, places, objects, and fragments of recent experience. Sometimes the combination is strange. A childhood home may appear beside a modern city. A familiar friend may speak with the voice of someone else. A real road may lead to an impossible landscape. Dreaming shows us how flexible the brain can be when it generates internal experience. During dreams, the brain is not receiving the world in the ordinary waking way. The eyes are closed. The body is largely disconnected from external movement. Yet the mind can produce vivid scenes. This tells us something profound. Conscious experience does not require the outside world to be constantly present. The brain can generate an internal world using its own activity. And memory contributes to the materials. Faces that have been seen, places that have been visited, words that have been heard, emotions that have been felt, movements that have been learned. Fragments can be combined. The result may be a dream. Perhaps tonight, your brain will build one of its own quiet worlds. You may not remember it tomorrow. Most dreams disappear quickly from memory after waking. Sometimes only a fragment remains. A color, a face, a strange feeling, a room, a sentence, and then the dream fades. This is another reminder that memory is selective. Even the experiences generated by the sleeping brain may vanish quickly. The mind is constantly deciding what remains accessible. And perhaps forgetting a dream is perfectly natural. You do not need to remember every dream. You do not need to remember every thought. You do not need to remember every day. The brain can let enormous amounts of information pass away, while preserving the patterns that matter most. Now, let us return to the deepest question. How does memory actually become physical? Scientists do not have a single complete answer, but we know that learning involves changes in neural circuits. Synapses can change. Gene expression can change. Proteins can be produced that support lasting cellular alterations. Neural networks can become more responsive to certain patterns. The brain can physically adapt to experience. This process is sometimes called synaptic plasticity. It is one of the central ideas in modern neuroscience. The basic principle is beautifully simple. When neurons communicate in particular patterns, the connections between them can change. Those changes can influence future activity. Experience alters the system. The altered system influences future experience. A continuous loop. Imagine pressing your fingers into soft clay. For a moment, the clay changes shape. Press again, and the shape becomes more defined. The brain is not clay. Its biology is much more dynamic. But the metaphor captures the idea that repeated activity can leave lasting changes. And memory may depend on many such changes happening across many networks at once. There is no single memory switch. There is no tiny vault. There is no one location where your entire childhood is hidden. Instead, memories emerge from patterns distributed across the nervous system. That may be why damage to one brain region does not always erase an entire person's memory. Different systems can remain intact. A person may have difficulty forming new memories, yet retain old knowledge. They may forget events, yet remember skills. They may struggle with names, yet recognize familiar faces. The brain's distributed architecture creates both complexity and resilience. And perhaps, as you lie quietly tonight, You can appreciate how extraordinary this system is. Not because it is perfect. It is not. Memory makes mistakes. It forgets. It confuses. It reconstructs. It changes. But despite all of that, it allows a human being to carry an entire history through time. You can be lying in the same room you entered tonight, while your mind travels through decades. A childhood street, a school corridor, a distant vacation, a friend's voice, a family meal, a forgotten afternoon, a place that no longer exists. All of these worlds can exist within the activity of a living brain. And then you can return. The room is still there. The bed is beneath you. The night is quiet. Your breathing continues. The memory fades. The present remains. This is the strange beauty of remembering. The past can visit, but it cannot stay forever. It appears, it changes, and eventually, it drifts away. And perhaps that is exactly how it should be. So tonight, you can release the need to remember. Let the brain keep what it needs. Let the rest become quiet. Let your thoughts move slowly, like clouds beneath a moonlit sky. No effort, no searching, no holding on. The garden is quiet now. The paths are empty. The trees barely move. The night air is cool. Somewhere far away, a single sound disappears into the darkness. And inside your mind, the great network of memory continues its silent rhythm, while you become heavier, calmer, softer, and closer to sleep. You can let go now. The story can continue without you. The brain can continue without you. The night can continue without you. For a while, there is nothing to remember, nothing to understand, nothing to solve, only rest and the gentle darkness, waiting patiently as you drift deeper into sleep. And now, as the night grows deeper, we can follow memory into one of its most mysterious places. The moment when a memory becomes part of a larger understanding. Because remembering one thing and understanding what that thing means are not quite the same. Imagine that you are holding an old photograph. You recognize the people. You recognize the room. You know approximately when it was taken, but perhaps there is something else. A meaning that did not exist when the photograph was first created. Maybe you were too young to understand what was happening. Years later, you see the same photograph again. Now you understand the relationships. You understand the conversation that happened before it. You understand why someone was smiling. You understand why another person looked tired. The image has not changed, but your memory of it has become richer. New knowledge has grown around the old experience. This is one of the remarkable properties of human memory. It does not exist separately from knowledge. Memories become woven into what we already understand. A child may remember a family gathering simply as a room full of people. An adult may remember the same gathering as a complicated moment in family history. The original experience has become connected to decades of additional information. Memory grows through association. Think of a river entering the sea. At first, the river is a distinct stream. Then it meets other currents. Fresh water mixes with salt water. The boundary becomes difficult to see. Memory can become like that. An experience begins as one event. Over time, it mixes with knowledge, emotion, language, later experiences, and everything you have learned since. Eventually, the original event becomes part of a much larger mental landscape. This is why experts often remember information differently from beginners. A beginner may encounter dozens of separate facts. An expert sees relationships. A doctor recognizes patterns and symptoms. A musician recognizes musical structures. An astronomer recognizes patterns in the sky. A historian connects events across decades. A carpenter can look at a piece of wood and immediately notice its grain and structure. Their memories are not simply larger. They are more organized. Experience has created a framework, and frameworks make remembering easier. Imagine trying to memorize 100 random dots. Now imagine those same dots forming a recognizable picture. The second task is easier because the information has structure. The brain is naturally sensitive to patterns. It looks for relationships. It searches for meaning. It compresses information into useful forms. This may help explain why meaningful stories are often easier to remember than disconnected lists. A story has characters, a setting, a sequence, cause and effect, beginnings, changes, consequences. The information is connected. The brain can move from one part to another. And this is exactly what we have been doing tonight. We are not simply listing facts about memory. We are moving through a story, from experience, to attention, to learning, to emotion, to sleep, to dreams, to the quiet biological changes that happen inside the brain. Each idea connects to the next, and perhaps that makes the information easier to follow. But you do not need to remember it. You can simply listen. There is something almost poetic about that. A story about memory, being heard by a brain that may later forget the story, while perhaps remembering a small feeling from it. Maybe tomorrow you will remember one sentence. Maybe you will remember nothing. Both are perfectly fine. The purpose of this moment is not to create a perfect memory. The purpose is simply to rest. Now, let us think about the difference between information and experience. You can know a fact without having personally experienced it. You may know that the moon orbits Earth. You may know that water freezes at a certain temperature under ordinary conditions. You may know the name of a distant city. You may know how a bicycle works. These are forms of knowledge. But remembering the first time you rode a bicycle, that is something different. You remember your own experience, the feeling of balance, the movement. Perhaps someone was holding the back of the bicycle. Perhaps you fell. Perhaps you laughed. Perhaps you were afraid. Perhaps the next attempt went better. The fact and the experience are not the same. Psychologists often distinguish between semantic memory and episodic memory. Semantic memory involves general knowledge, facts, meanings, concepts, words. Episodic memory involves recollections of particular experiences, a specific afternoon, a particular conversation, a journey, a birthday, a moment from school. These systems interact constantly. You need semantic knowledge to understand your experiences, and your experiences help build semantic knowledge. Imagine learning what rain is. A child may first learn the word, rain. Then comes the experience, drops touching the skin, water running down a window, puddles forming on the ground, the sound against a roof. Later, the child learns about clouds, weather, water cycles, storms, temperature. Now the simple word rain belongs to an enormous network. A single concept can contain years of learning. And perhaps this is happening inside your mind right now. Words you hear are connecting with things you already know. You may not consciously notice the connections, but your brain is constantly comparing new information with existing knowledge. Some ideas fit immediately, others create questions, some remind you of something else. That is learning in motion. There is also another fascinating form of learning: conditioning. The nervous system can learn that one event predicts another. A particular sound may become associated with food. A place may become associated with safety. A certain environment may become associated with relaxation. These associations can influence behavior without requiring conscious thought. The brain is constantly learning relationships between events. This ability is ancient. Animals use learned associations to navigate their environments. A certain smell may signal food. A particular sound may signal danger. A familiar path may lead toward shelter. A change in light may signal the approaching morning. The nervous system learns what tends to come next, and humans have developed this ability to extraordinary complexity. Think about the sound of an alarm. You may hear it before you are fully awake. Your brain recognizes the pattern immediately. Perhaps you have heard the same sound hundreds of times. The association is strong. The sound means morning, or work, or an appointment, or something that needs attention. The sound itself has become connected to an expected event. Now think about a completely different sound: the gentle sound of rain. Perhaps your brain has learned a different association: quiet, warmth, a window, a blanket, sleep. The same physical world can create very different internal responses depending on your history. Memory helps give sensory information its meaning. This is why familiar environments can feel comforting. The brain already knows what to expect. The room is predictable. The sounds are known. The path is familiar. There are fewer surprises. Your nervous system can relax because the environment fits its learned model. And perhaps that is one reason bedtime routines can become powerful. A familiar sequence tells the brain that the day is ending. Lights become softer. Activities become quieter. The same room appears. The same bed waits. The same sounds return. Over time, these cues become associated with sleep. The brain begins to recognize the pattern. Night has arrived. It is time to slow down. Nothing magical is required. The nervous system simply learns associations, just as it learns a road, a melody, a face, or a familiar voice. It can learn the rhythm of rest. Now, imagine the brain as a vast night garden. During the day, people walk through it. Some paths become busy. New flowers appear. Leaves fall. Branches move. New footprints cross the soil. Then night arrives. The garden becomes quiet. The visitors leave, and the garden begins its own slow maintenance. Some paths are reinforced. Some are less important. New growth becomes integrated. The landscape changes. Again, it is only an image, but it gives us a peaceful way to think about memory. Sleep is not simply a time when yesterday disappears. It is part of the continuing biological process of adapting to experience. And this is one reason a good night's sleep can influence how we learn. When you are tired, attention can suffer. Learning becomes more difficult. Working memory can become less effective. The brain may have a harder time concentrating on new information. Rest restores the conditions that allow attention and learning to work more effectively. So memory begins even before memory. It begins with the ability to pay attention, to notice, to process, to connect, to understand, and sleep supports the entire system. You may have noticed this in your own life. Sometimes you study something late at night. The information seems impossible. The words blur together. Nothing stays in your mind. Then you sleep. The next day, the same material suddenly feels easier. Not always, but sometimes. Part of the reason may be that sleep has allowed the brain to consolidate learning. Another part may simply be that a rested brain can pay better attention. Either way, rest and memory are deeply connected. And now, we can drift toward another remarkable subject: the relationship between memory and dreams. Dreams are not simply memories, but memories can contribute material to dreams. A dream may contain familiar people, places, objects, and fragments of recent experience. Sometimes the combination is strange. A childhood home may appear beside a modern city. A familiar friend may speak with the voice of someone else. A real road may lead to an impossible landscape. Dreaming shows us how flexible the brain can be when it generates internal experience. During dreams, the brain is not receiving the world in the ordinary waking way. The eyes are closed. The body is largely disconnected from external movement. Yet the mind can produce vivid scenes. This tells us something profound. Conscious experience does not require the outside world to be constantly present. The brain can generate an internal world using its own activity. And memory contributes to the materials. Faces that have been seen, places that have been visited, words that have been heard, emotions that have been felt, movements that have been learned. Fragments can be combined. The result may be a dream. Perhaps tonight, your brain will build one of its own quiet worlds. You may not remember it tomorrow. Most dreams disappear quickly from memory after waking. Sometimes only a fragment remains. A color, a face, a strange feeling, a room, a sentence, and then the dream fades. This is another reminder that memory is selective. Even the experiences generated by the sleeping brain may vanish quickly. The mind is constantly deciding what remains accessible. And perhaps forgetting a dream is perfectly natural. You do not need to remember every dream. You do not need to remember every thought. You do not need to remember every day. The brain can let enormous amounts of information pass away, while preserving the patterns that matter most. Now, let us return to the deepest question. How does memory actually become physical? Scientists do not have a single complete answer. But we know that learning involves changes in neural circuits. Synapses can change. Gene expression can change. Proteins can be produced that support lasting cellular alterations. Neural networks can become more responsive to certain patterns. The brain can physically adapt to experience. This process is sometimes called synaptic plasticity. It is one of the central ideas in modern neuroscience. The basic principle is beautifully simple. When neurons communicate in particular patterns, the connections between them can change. Those changes can influence future activity. Experience alters the system. The altered system influences future experience. A continuous loop. Imagine pressing your fingers into soft clay. For a moment, the clay changes shape. Press again, and the shape becomes more defined. The brain is not clay. Its biology is much more dynamic. But the metaphor captures the idea that repeated activity can leave lasting changes. And memory may depend on many such changes happening across many networks at once. There is no single memory switch. There is no tiny vault. There is no one location where your entire childhood is hidden. Instead, memories emerge from patterns distributed across the nervous system. That may be why damage to one brain region does not always erase an entire person's memory. Different systems can remain intact. A person may have difficulty forming new memories, yet retain old knowledge. They may forget events, yet remember skills. They may struggle with names, yet recognize familiar faces. The brain's distributed architecture creates both complexity and resilience. And perhaps, as you lie quietly tonight, you can appreciate how extraordinary this system is. Not because it is perfect. It is not. Memory makes mistakes. It forgets. It confuses. It reconstructs. It changes. But despite all of that, it allows a human being to carry an entire history through time. You can be lying in the same room you entered tonight, while your mind travels through decades. A childhood street, a school corridor, a distant vacation, a friend's voice, a family meal, a forgotten afternoon, a place that no longer exists. All of these worlds can exist within the activity of a living brain. And then, you can return. The room is still there. The bed is beneath you. The night is quiet. Your breathing continues. The memory fades. The present remains. This is the strange beauty of remembering. The past can visit, but it cannot stay forever. It appears. It changes, and eventually, it drifts away. And perhaps that is exactly how it should be. The quiet landscape continues, and somewhere beyond the edge of conscious thought, memory is still changing. Not dramatically, not all at once, but through countless small biological adjustments. One experience after another becomes part of the living structure of the brain. Tonight, we can wander toward another remarkable question. What happens when memories begin to interact with one another? Because the brain does not remember your life as a simple timeline. It does not place January beside February, then March, then April, in perfectly labeled boxes. Instead, memories overlap. They connect. They influence one another. And sometimes, one memory can help create another. Imagine a long hallway with hundreds of doors. Behind one door is a childhood kitchen. Behind another is a school classroom. Another contains the memory of a particular journey. Another holds a conversation. Another contains a smell. Another contains the sound of rain. But the doors are not independent. There are little passages between them. The kitchen connects to a person. The person connects to a song. The song connects to a summer. The summer connects to a particular house. The house connects to a feeling. The brain is filled with these connections. This network structure is one reason association is so powerful. When you learn something new, your brain does not simply place it at the end of a list. It tries to connect it with what is already known. That is how knowledge grows. A new fact becomes connected to an old fact. A new place becomes connected to an old place. A new person becomes connected to familiar people. A new skill becomes connected to older skills. And gradually, the new becomes familiar. Think about learning to use a new piece of technology. At first, everything seems unfamiliar. There are buttons, menus, symbols, commands. You have to think about each step. But if you already understand another similar device, the new one may be easier. You recognize familiar patterns. You already understand the general idea. Your previous knowledge gives your brain a starting point. Learning becomes easier because the new information has somewhere to attach. This is called prior knowledge, and it can have an enormous influence on memory. Someone who knows a great deal about astronomy will usually find it easier to understand a new astronomy concept than someone encountering the subject for the first time. Not because the expert has a better brain, but because the expert already has a large network of related knowledge. There are more connections available, more mental hooks, more places for the new idea to fit. Imagine building a house. If there is already a strong foundation, new rooms can be added more easily. If there is no foundation, every new structure requires more work. Learning often follows the same principle. Knowledge creates a foundation for more knowledge. And this may help explain why children sometimes appear to learn certain things effortlessly. Their brains are highly adaptable, but they are also building foundational networks from the beginning. Language, faces, objects, numbers, movement, social relationships, the physical world. Every ordinary experience is contributing to an enormous developing framework. A child may hear the word tree many times before understanding exactly what a tree is. At first, the word is just a sound. Then the child sees trees. Different trees. Big trees. Small trees. Trees with leaves. Trees without leaves. Trees in rain. Trees in sunlight. Trees in books. Gradually, the concept becomes richer. The word becomes connected to visual patterns, movement, texture, season, and place. A single word can become a whole network. This process continues throughout life. Your understanding of almost everything grows through repeated encounters. The first time you visit a city, it may seem confusing. After several visits, the streets become familiar. After years, you may know the city almost instinctively. You know where the sun falls in the afternoon, which streets are quiet, where the traffic slows, where the trees are, where you can find a particular shop. The city has become part of your internal map. And memory is not only helping you remember the city, it is helping you predict it. You expect the road to curve. You expect the traffic light. You expect the bridge. You expect the sound of vehicles. Prediction is one of the brain's most important functions. The brain is constantly using previous experience to anticipate what comes next. Imagine reaching for a cup. You do not consciously calculate every movement. Your brain has learned how objects behave. You estimate where the cup is, how far away it is, how much your arm needs to move, how your hand should close. Your muscles make tiny adjustments. The cup is lifted. All of this depends partly on previous learning. Your brain has experienced countless similar movements. Memory is therefore inside action. It is inside movement. It is inside perception. It is inside language. It is inside expectation. It is inside almost every ordinary moment. You may not feel yourself remembering, because memory has become part of the machinery of living. Now imagine a person learning to walk. The first steps are uncertain. Balance is difficult. The body sways. The arms move. The feet search for stability. With practice, the nervous system learns. The movement becomes smoother. Eventually, walking becomes something you rarely think about. You simply move. That transformation is one of the quiet miracles of learning. Conscious effort becomes automatic ability. The same thing happens with handwriting, with typing, with driving, with playing music, with speaking, with cooking, with using tools, with countless other skills. The brain learns patterns through repetition, and repeated patterns can become deeply embedded in neural systems. Procedural memory is especially important here. It allows learned skills to influence behavior without requiring you to consciously recall every step. You know how to tie your shoes. You know how to climb stairs. You know how to use a spoon. You know how to hold a familiar tool. You do not need to narrate every movement. Your body has learned. This is why forgetting a fact does not necessarily mean losing a skill. A person may forget the name of a musical piece, yet still know how to play it. Someone may forget when they learned to swim, yet still be able to swim. Someone may not remember every driving lesson, yet still drive safely along a familiar route. Different memory systems can preserve different parts of experience. And that brings us to one of the strangest aspects of memory. Sometimes, you remember how to do something, but you do not remember learning it. You know the skill, but the story of how you acquired it is gone. The procedure remains, while the episode has faded. Think about learning to use a keyboard. You probably cannot remember the exact moment when you first learned where every letter was, but your fingers know. The skill has become detached from the original learning experience. It belongs to you now. This separation can be useful. You do not need to remember the history of every skill in order to use it. The brain can preserve the ability, while allowing the original learning episodes to become less accessible. Again, memory is selective. It keeps what is useful. It does not preserve everything equally. Now, let us travel into another quiet part of the brain, the cerebral cortex. The large outer layer of the brain contains many specialized areas. Different regions participate in processing different kinds of information. Visual information is processed through networks in the back and sides of the brain. Auditory information involves networks around the temporal lobes. Language depends on distributed networks. Movement involves motor regions. Touch involves sensory regions. And memories can involve many of these systems together. When you remember a beach, you may experience an imagined visual scene. You may remember the sound of waves. You may remember the smell of salt. You may remember the feeling of sand. You may remember what you were thinking. The memory feels like one thing, but it is built from many kinds of information. Different brain networks contribute different pieces. This is another reason memory is distributed. A remembered experience can involve perception, language, emotion, movement, and spatial knowledge. The brain brings these elements together. Imagine a small orchestra. The violin is one instrument. The piano is another. The drums provide rhythm. The flute adds another sound. No single instrument is the entire song, but together, they create something new. Memory is somewhat like this. Different systems contribute different elements. The remembered experience emerges from their interaction. And sometimes, one instrument can remain intact when another is damaged. That is why neurological injuries can produce such specific patterns of memory difficulty. A person may have trouble recognizing faces. Another may have difficulty forming new memories. Another may struggle with spatial navigation. Another may have problems retrieving words. The brain is a network of specialized systems working together. This complexity also explains why memory can be surprisingly resilient. If one pathway becomes less effective, other systems may sometimes contribute. The brain can adapt. It can reorganize. It can learn new strategies. This ability is part of neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is not magic. It does not mean the brain can always repair every kind of damage. But it does mean that neural systems can change in response to experience. Practice can strengthen skills. Learning can reshape networks. Repeated behavior can influence the nervous system. And throughout life, the brain remains dynamic. Think of a shoreline. The ocean reaches the sand. Wave after wave arrives. The coastline is not fixed. It changes slowly, sometimes almost invisibly. The brain is also shaped by repeated experience. A single event may have a small effect. Years of repeated experience can have a much larger influence. This is one reason habits become powerful. A behavior repeated again and again becomes familiar. The brain begins to expect it. The sequence becomes easier. The action requires less conscious effort. Eventually, the behavior may feel automatic. And habits are closely connected to memory. Your morning routine, the route you take to work, the way you prepare coffee, the order in which you get dressed, the way you organize your desk. These are learned patterns. Your brain has stored expectations about what comes next. Now imagine changing your routine. You wake at a different time. You use a different door. You take a different road. Suddenly, ordinary actions require more attention. Why? Because the old predictions no longer match the environment. Your brain has to build a new model. It has to learn again. This is why unfamiliar environments can feel mentally tiring. There are more decisions, more uncertainty, more information requiring attention. The brain cannot rely as heavily on established patterns. Everything feels new. But after several days, the environment begins to settle. The hallway becomes familiar. The sounds become familiar. The route becomes familiar. The new routine becomes easier. The brain has learned. And perhaps this is happening in your life all the time. You move through new experiences. Your brain quietly absorbs them. At first, they demand attention. Later, they become ordinary. And some of them eventually become memories. The strange thing is, you rarely notice when that transformation happens. There is no bell, no announcement, no moment when the brain says, "This experience has now become a memory." It simply happens gradually. A moment passes, then another. The brain processes it. Some information fades immediately. Some remains active for a little while. Some becomes connected with existing knowledge. Some is strengthened. Some becomes part of long-term memory. And the process continues. Day after day, year after year, this invisible process builds the person you recognize as yourself. Not one memory at a time, but through millions of interactions. And now, let us think about the memories that are easiest to access. Often, they are memories that have been revisited many times. Every time you tell a story, you retrieve it. Every time you look at a photograph, you may reactivate related information. Every time you visit a familiar place, you may reactivate associated memories. Repeated retrieval can make access easier. But there is a subtle cost. The version you repeatedly retrieve may become more familiar than the original details. the story can become polished. Some details disappear, others become emphasized. Eventually, you may remember the version of the story you have told many times. That does not make the memory fake. It simply means the memory has a history. Your memories have been remembered, and remembering changes the brain. So a memory from 20 years ago may not be exactly the same memory you experienced 20 years ago. It is the present brain's reconstruction of that earlier experience. This is why memory is alive. It is not a fossil. A fossil remains in one form. Memory can move. It can become richer. It can become simpler. It can connect with new information. It can lose details. It can gain meaning. And perhaps that is why some memories become more beautiful with age. A simple childhood moment may seem ordinary when it happens. Years later, you understand its value. The moment has not changed, but you have. And because you have changed, the memory has acquired new meaning. So tonight, as you lie quietly, you can let your own memories exist without trying to judge them. You do not need to decide which ones are important. You do not need to force yourself to remember. You do not need to push away anything that appears. If a memory comes, let it pass. If nothing comes, let the mind remain quiet. The brain does not need instructions. It has been practicing this work for your entire life. It knows how to learn. It knows how to connect. It knows how to forget. It knows how to retrieve. It knows how to dream. And it knows how to rest. Outside, the world continues. But for now, you are removed from its demands. The lights are lower. The sounds are softer. Your body is supported. Your breathing is steady. The muscles of your face can relax. The mind can become less precise. Perhaps the words are beginning to sound distant. Perhaps you are no longer following every idea. That is perfectly fine. You can let the story dissolve into the background, like distant music heard through a closed door. And somewhere inside, your brain continues its quiet conversation. Neurons communicate. Networks become active. Memories are linked. Old information meets new information. The past meets the present. And the sleeping brain continues preparing for tomorrow, without asking you to do anything at all. So let the hallway become darker. Let the doors become quiet. Let the paths disappear beneath the moonlight. There is nothing you need to find, nothing you need to remember, nothing you need to solve. Only rest, only breathing, only the soft rhythm of the night. And as the last thoughts become lighter, let yourself drift, slowly, peacefully, deeper into the quiet world of sleep. The night is deep now, and the story of memory continues beneath the quiet surface of the mind. We have followed memories through attention, through emotion, through learning, through sleep, and through the changing pathways of the brain. Now, let us explore something even more subtle: the difference between remembering something and knowing that you remember it. Imagine finding an old key in a drawer. You recognize it immediately. You know that you have seen it before, but you cannot remember what door it belongs to. There is a strange feeling of familiarity. Without a complete memory, you know that something is known, but the details remain just beyond reach. This happens because memory involves more than one kind of mental experience. There is the information itself, and there is your awareness of having encountered it before. You may recognize a person's face without remembering their name. You may recognize a melody without remembering where you first heard it. You may know that a book is familiar without remembering when you read it. The brain can preserve traces of previous experience, even when the story surrounding those experiences is difficult to retrieve. This is one reason memory is more complicated than simply asking, "Do you remember?" A better question might be, "What exactly do you remember?" Do you remember the event, the feeling, the information, the skill, the location, the person, the sequence, or simply the sense that something is familiar? Different aspects can behave differently. Imagine hearing a sentence you have heard many times before. You recognize the words. You understand their meaning, but you may not remember the first time you heard them. The knowledge remains. The original episode has faded. This distinction between general knowledge and personal experience is fundamental to human memory. Semantic memory allows you to know things about the world. You know that water is wet. You know that the earth is a planet. You know the meaning of ordinary words. You know how certain objects work. You know facts about people you have never met. You do not need to remember the moment when you learned each fact. The knowledge has become part of your broader understanding. Episodic memory is more personal. It is connected to events that happened to you. You remember sitting somewhere, walking somewhere, talking to someone, seeing something, feeling something. The event has a particular time and context. These memories help create the feeling of a personal past. And the two systems constantly interact. Suppose you remember visiting a museum. You remember the building. You remember standing beside a particular painting. You remember the person who was with you. But you also know things about the painting that you learned later. You may know the artist, the historical period, the technique, the cultural background. Some of that information may have been acquired years after the visit. Your memory of the event and your general knowledge about it become intertwined. This is another reason memories can change. New information can become attached to old experiences. The brain does not keep every piece of information in a sealed compartment. Instead, memories exist within networks, and networks grow. Imagine planting a tree in a quiet garden. At first, the tree is small. There are only a few branches. Years pass. The tree grows. New branches appear. Birds build nests. Vines begin to climb. The original trunk is still there, but the tree has become something much larger. Memory can develop in a similar way. The original experience remains part of the network, but years of later knowledge can become attached to it. This can be useful. It allows old experiences to become more meaningful. A childhood experience can be understood differently when you are older. A scientific idea learned in school can make sense in a completely new way after years of study. A familiar place can reveal details you never noticed before. Knowledge changes what you see. And that brings us back to attention. You cannot notice everything. The brain must select. Imagine sitting in a busy cafe. There are dozens of conversations, cups moving, chairs scraping, music playing, doors opening, people walking past. Your brain receives an enormous stream of sensory information. Yet you may focus on the person sitting across from you. Their voice becomes clearer. The surrounding sounds fade into the background. Attention has selected one stream from many. This ability is sometimes described as selective attention. It is essential because conscious processing is limited. You cannot give equal attention to everything. The brain constantly filters, and what you attend to is more likely to receive deeper processing. Now imagine that someone suddenly says your name from across the room. Even if you were not listening to their conversation, your attention may shift immediately. Your own name has special significance. Your brain has learned it extremely well. It is connected to your identity, to social experience, to countless previous moments when other people said it. A familiar pattern can break through the background. This is a beautiful example of how memory and attention work together. Your brain knows what matters to you because it has learned you. And this learning begins very early, long before a child can explain the idea of identity. The child's nervous system is learning familiar voices, faces, expressions, sounds, movements, patterns of interaction. The brain is gradually building a model of the social world. A familiar caregiver's voice can become deeply recognizable. A child's brain learns the rhythm, the pitch, the timing, the emotional patterns. Over countless interactions, the voice becomes part of the child's internal world. As language develops, memory becomes even more powerful. Words allow experiences to be labeled, instead of simply remembering a warm room. A child can eventually say, "That was Grandma's kitchen." The experience now has language attached to it. The language becomes another pathway into the memory. This may be one reason autobiographical memory changes dramatically as children develop. Language provides a structure for describing experience. The developing sense of self provides another. Social interaction adds another. The brain is gradually learning how to organize a life into a story. And humans are storytellers. We naturally organize experience into sequences. First this happened, then something changed, then we learned something, then we moved somewhere else. Stories provide structure, and structure helps memory. Think about the difference between remembering a list of events and remembering a journey. A journey has a beginning, a path, a destination, unexpected moments, people, changes, a story. The brain can use these relationships tie-in-ships to organize information. This is why personal memories often feel like scenes. A place, a moment, a person, a sound, a movement. The mind reconstructs the scene. It does not need to reproduce every detail. It only needs enough information to create a coherent experience. And sometimes, the brain fills in gaps. This can happen because the brain uses expectations and general knowledge. If you remember entering a familiar room, you may automatically imagine the furniture that was usually there. If you remember a family meal, you may picture the usual table. If you remember a school classroom, you may imagine desks and windows. Some of those details may be accurate. Others may come from what you know generally about the place. The brain is constantly trying to create a coherent model. It does not like meaningless fragments. It searches for patterns. This tendency is useful. Without it, the world would feel like disconnected pieces. Instead, your brain creates continuity. You recognize objects. You understand sentences. You anticipate movement. You know what usually happens next. The world becomes understandable. But coherence can sometimes come at the expense of precision. The brain may prefer a meaningful story to a perfect record. That is why memory errors can feel completely genuine. The brain is not necessarily lying. It is constructing the best representation it can from the available information. Imagine rebuilding an old stone wall. Some stones are still present. Others have fallen away. You find replacement stones nearby. You arrange them so the wall makes sense. The final wall resembles the original, but not every stone is exactly where it once was. Memory can sometimes be like that. Now, let us think about something that happens every night. As you prepare for sleep, the environment becomes predictable. The same bed, the same room, the same darkness, the same quiet. The nervous system begins to recognize the pattern. The brain learns that these cues often lead toward rest. This is conditioning again, not complicated, not mysterious, simply learning through repeated association. The more consistent the environment, the easier it can become for the brain to recognize the transition from activity to rest. And now, your body may already be responding. Your breathing is slower. Your muscles are less active. Your eyes are closed. The outside world is becoming less important. Inside the brain, electrical activity continues. Neurons communicate. Chemical systems change. Networks become synchronized in different ways. The brain moves through its natural sleep architecture. During deeper non-REM sleep, large populations of neurons can become active and quiet in coordinated patterns. These slow oscillations are part of the distinctive rhythm of deep sleep. The brain is not simply shutting down. It is entering a different mode of operation. And during sleep, the hippocampus and cortex interact in ways that researchers believe are important for memory consolidation. The hippocampus can reactivate patterns related to recent experience. These events may help communicate information toward broader cortical networks. Again, the process is not like copying a file. It is more like reorganizing relationships. A new memory gradually becomes integrated into an existing network of knowledge. Imagine a new path joining an old road. At first, the path is narrow. Only a few connections exist. Over time, the connection becomes stronger. The new route becomes part of the larger map. This is a useful way to imagine memory consolidation. New learning becomes connected to what was already there. And this may explain why learning often becomes more stable after sleep. The brain has had time to process. Not consciously, not deliberately, but biologically. You do not need to stay awake and think about everything you learned. In fact, constant conscious effort is not always helpful. There are moments when the best thing you can do is stop, rest, sleep. Let the nervous system continue its work. And perhaps that is exactly what you are doing now. You are allowing your attention to soften. The details no longer need to remain sharp. The story can become background. Your breathing can become the foreground. Slowly, in and out. No need to count. No need to control it. Just let your body find its natural rhythm. Now imagine that your memories are stars. Some are bright. Some are distant. Some are hidden behind clouds. You do not need to visit them. You do not need to name them. They can remain where they are. Your brain can hold them quietly. Perhaps one memory appears. A room from childhood. Let it be there. Do not examine it. Perhaps a face appears. Let it pass. Perhaps a song, a road, a smell, a voice. Nothing needs to be solved. Memories can come and go. That is what minds do. The appearance of a memory does not require a response. You can simply notice and let it drift away. The same is true of thoughts. You may suddenly think about tomorrow, a task, a conversation, something unfinished. You do not have to follow it. Let it become another cloud. The brain can return to it later. For now, rest. There is always another moment waiting. But this moment is enough. The room is enough. The bed is enough. The darkness is enough. Your breathing is enough. And somewhere deep within, your brain is carrying an extraordinary history. Every lesson, every place, every face, every skill, every sound, every ordinary moment that left some trace. All of it has contributed to the person lying here now. Yet you do not need to carry all of it consciously. That is the beauty of memory. Most of its work happens outside awareness. The brain remembers for you. It predicts for you. It recognizes for you. It learns for you. And while you sleep, it continues. The night stretches onward. The world outside becomes quieter. The air grows still. The room becomes softer. And your thoughts begin to lose their edges. Words become images. Images become sensations. Sensations become dreams. And perhaps soon, even the dreams will fade. There will be no story, no memory, no need to understand, only sleep. So let the old doors close. Let the pathways become quiet. Let the stars grow faint. The mind has nothing more to prove tonight, nothing more to remember, nothing more to solve. You can rest now, and while you rest, your brain will continue its ancient work, quietly, patiently, gently, carrying the useful pieces of the past forward, and letting everything else soften into the darkness. The night is peaceful, your body is heavy, your breathing is slow, and you are drifting deeper and deeper into sleep.